We all want to feel understood, appreciated, and respected. Yet, no matter how well-intentioned we are, there will always be moments when we encounter tension or silent hostility from others. Sometimes, the reasons people harbor resentment or dislike for us aren't spoken aloud. They're hidden under polite smiles, unreturned messages, or subtle, cold gestures that leave us wondering, what went wrong? There's a natural impulse to feel confused or even hurt by these silent judgments. You might think, I've done my best, tried to be kind, and never meant any harm. Yet, this feeling of invisible friction with others can linger. It's a frustrating reality that, as much as we try to cultivate positivity in our lives, resentment can often bloom where we least expect it. But there's good news. By recognizing what often causes people to harbor these hidden feelings, you can learn to address it in ways that strengthen your resilience and self-confidence. This journey isn't about changing who you are to please others. Instead, it's about gaining insight into the dynamics of human relationships, understanding how our actions and success impact others, and building the inner strength to rise above negativity without sacrificing your true self. One essential step in dealing with the subtle but real undercurrents of resentment is developing resilience. When others dislike or resent us, it often has much more to do with their inner struggles than with our character. Knowing this can empower you to stay grounded, even when faced with cold shoulders or unexplained hostility. Resilience in these situations doesn't mean ignoring the problem. It means facing it without letting it disrupt your peace. Self-worth plays a vital role too. When we deeply value ourselves, the opinions and judgments of others start to lose their power over us. Rather than getting swept away by someone else's negative view, you can remain anchored in your confidence, clear in your values, and focused on your personal growth. This way, even if others can't see your worth, it doesn't shake your belief in yourself. Self-worth is like a steady light, guiding you through moments of doubt and helping you recognize that others' opinions are simply reflections of their own perspective, not of your truth. It's tempting to dismiss or avoid the negative feelings others might hold toward us. However, by understanding the sources of resentment, you gain a powerful perspective on the human experience. You begin to see that everyone's journey is filled with challenges, insecurities, and moments of self-doubt. Recognizing that many of these hidden tensions stem from unresolved inner struggles helps you to respond with compassion rather than defensiveness. This isn't about excusing toxic behavior, but about understanding the complexities of human interactions. Sometimes, resentment is rooted in envy. Your achievements might unknowingly highlight another person's insecurities. Or perhaps your confidence is interpreted as arrogance by someone who feels insecure about their own self-worth. These responses are common, and they speak volumes about the fragility of the human ego. This awareness doesn't just benefit your relationships, it also frees you. When you understand that resentment is often more about the person feeling it than about you, it becomes easier to let go of their judgments. You start to see that you don't need to dim your light to keep others comfortable. Instead, you can shine confidently, knowing that the right people will appreciate your authenticity, while those who don't may be dealing with their own inner battles. By examining the reasons behind people's hidden resentment, you give yourself a gift, the freedom to be unapologetically yourself. This clarity allows you to move through life with the understanding that not everyone will celebrate your wins, and that's okay. What matters is that you continue to grow, live authentically, and focus on the things that bring you genuine fulfillment. Think about how liberating it would be to know that you are strong enough to handle disapproval without losing your sense of worth. To live with the confidence that you are enough, regardless of who approves or disapproves. When you can stand by your values and keep pursuing your goals despite the negative whispers, you embody true resilience. Learning about the roots of resentment is more than a survival tool. It's a way to develop empathy and insight. Once you understand that jealousy, misunderstandings, or conflicting values can fuel hidden hostility, you'll be able to interact with others more wisely. You'll see beyond the surface and understand that everyone carries invisible burdens. Rather than taking things personally, you'll be able to remain calm, compassionate, and focused on your own growth. One of the most empowering things you can do is build a fortress of inner strength. When others harbor ill feelings toward you, it's easy to feel defensive or angry. But inner strength transforms these moments from challenges into opportunities for self-discovery. With a strong sense of self, you become less reactive and more thoughtful. You start to see resentment as a reflection of someone else's journey, not an indictment of your character. Inner strength means recognizing your value without needing anyone else to validate it. It's about cultivating a mindset that thrives on purpose rather than approval. Think of it this way. People who possess inner peace are rarely swayed by the opinions of others. They stay focused on their goals, committed to their values, and resilient through criticism. By prioritizing your inner peace, you equip yourself to handle resentment with grace and poise. When you focus on living in alignment with your values and goals, you attract genuine connections and repel superficial judgments. Living authentically means prioritizing peace, purpose, and growth over external approval. This mindset is what allows you to keep moving forward, even when faced with judgment or negativity. Instead of letting others' hidden resentment pull you down, you begin to see it as a natural part of life, something to understand but not dwell on. In a world that often urges us to fit in, embrace conformity, or shrink ourselves, it takes courage to stand strong and refuse to compromise your values for the comfort of others. But this courage is precisely what leads to a life of fulfillment. When you prioritize living with integrity, you may face some resentment, but you'll also attract respect, admiration, and deep satisfaction. Ultimately, learning about the roots of resentment is about making peace with the fact that not everyone will understand or like you, and that's perfectly normal. People's opinions and feelings are often shaped by factors that have nothing to do with you. They might feel threatened by your success, uncomfortable with your boundaries, or envious of your achievements. But these reactions are theirs to process, not yours to bear. True peace comes when you can acknowledge these feelings without internalizing them. Instead of letting resentment pull you into self-doubt, let it serve as a reminder of the importance of staying true to yourself. Your journey is yours to live, and your value doesn't depend on anyone else's perception. As you begin this exploration into the reasons others may harbor resentment toward you, embrace the freedom that comes from understanding it. You are here to live a life of purpose, joy, and growth, not to chase approval from those who may never offer it. This journey isn't about striving for universal acceptance. It's about becoming resilient enough to stay focused on your own goals, grounded in your values, and committed to a life that fulfills you. You are enough as you are. While others may misunderstand, judge, or resent you, remember that these reactions don't define your worth. When you learn to stand firm in who you are, you become unstoppable. You'll know that no amount of silent resentment can deter you from pursuing your passions, fostering meaningful connections, and living a life that brings you joy and peace. So, as you move forward, keep this truth close to your heart. Not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. Some will envy you, misunderstand you, or judge you without cause. But in the end, what matters most is that you understand yourself. Focus on building inner peace, nurturing resilience, and staying true to your values. The world needs more people who are unafraid to live authentically, even when faced with the quiet disapproval of others. As you explore the reasons behind hidden resentment, may you find a deeper sense of peace and confidence. May you rise above negativity with compassion for others and unshakable faith in yourself. Each reason we explore will offer insights not only into others' behaviors, but also into the incredible power you hold to remain steady, strong, and joyful. Let's begin this journey with an open mind and a courageous heart, ready to learn, grow, and, most importantly, stay true to the path you were meant to walk. Success can be a remarkable force, lifting you to heights that bring pride and fulfillment. Yet, as you ascend, it can trigger emotions in others that range from admiration to envy. This side of success, the part that shines a light on insecurities, is one rarely spoken of. How often have you felt the chill in someone's response when you shared good news, or sensed an invisible wall when you achieved something meaningful? There's a complex and often hidden world that opens up when your success casts a reflection on the fears, self-doubts, and unfulfilled aspirations of those around you. The truth is, the more you thrive, the more some people feel reminded of their own disappointments or insecurities. Instead of celebrating your growth, they may see it as an uncomfortable comparison to their own lives. They may not even realize it, but your success can stir a mirror to their own perceived shortcomings. For some, it's not just about what you've achieved, it's what they feel they haven't. And rather than seeking inspiration, they respond with jealousy, anger, or a subtle coolness that speaks louder than words. This envy can seep into relationships, adding strain and leading to misunderstandings that weigh heavily on both sides. Understanding this hidden tension can help you better navigate the reactions of others and empower you to keep growing without being dragged down by resentment or jealousy. It's essential to approach these situations with insight, compassion, and a resilient confidence in your journey. By recognizing the subtle ways envy manifests, you can move forward with greater wisdom and, importantly, keep your focus on what matters most: your continued growth, inner peace, and unshakable self-worth. When you succeed, it's natural for those close to you to feel proud and happy. However, success doesn't only highlight achievements, it often casts shadows on insecurities. When others see you reaching goals, it can bring their own unmet dreams and struggles into sharper focus. These feelings are complex and can trigger jealousy or resentment. For instance, a friend who is struggling to find direction might feel uncomfortable with your career growth, not because they truly dislike you, but because it intensifies their own inner battles. They might smile and say congratulations, but inwardly there's an ache, a reminder of where they wish they were but aren't. In these cases, the issue is rarely personal. It's not about what you've done, but about what they feel they haven't. Some people view success as a reflection of their self-worth, so when they see others achieving, it feels like an indirect critique of their own progress. This dynamic is heightened if they're comparing their lives to yours, feeling that they should be at a similar place. They may not even realize it, but each achievement you share can feed an unspoken comparison in their mind. Instead of drawing inspiration, they may feel that they're falling short, which builds resentment over time. One of the most common reactions to envy is silent judgment. While they might not openly criticize, their attitude shifts. They become distant, responding to your successes with lukewarm enthusiasm. This can feel confusing, especially if it's someone you've been close to. Suddenly, you notice that conversations turn strained, and moments that should be joyful are filled with a tension that wasn't there before. They may give subtle hints, like not celebrating your wins or finding small faults in your achievements, to undermine the happiness of your moment. These actions stem from their need to bring your success down to a level where they feel more comfortable. Sometimes this jealousy appears in the form of indirect discouragement. Friends or family might offer unsolicited advice or concerns about the path you're on, not because they genuinely fear for your well-being, but because they want to dim your ambition. When someone feels left behind, there's often a subconscious urge to hold others back as a way to regain a sense of control. They may say things like, "Are you sure this is the right move?" or "Don't you think you're taking on too much?" This is their insecurity showing, disguised as concern. It's a way to add doubt to your achievements and cast shadows on your path, hoping it will make them feel less alone in their struggles. Another common expression of envy is a shift in emotional dynamics, where people start competing with you subtly or openly. Suddenly, they become more focused on one-upping you or trying to prove that their life choices are better. A colleague may start talking about their accomplishments every time you mention a win, trying to bring the attention back to themselves. It becomes a silent battle, where instead of support, you feel you're in an ongoing comparison. The energy that once connected you shifts to a subtle rivalry, often leaving you wondering why things feel off. This competitive shift is their attempt to re-establish a sense of importance in their own eyes. In some cases, envy can turn into passive aggression. These individuals may start to make small, cutting remarks disguised as jokes, or minimize your achievements in front of others. You might hear phrases like, "Must be nice to have things go so easily for you," or "Not everyone has the same luck as you." These comments come with a sting, designed to make you question your success or feel that you don't deserve it. Passive-aggressive remarks are a way for them to express their discomfort without directly confronting their feelings of envy. It's a tactic to subtly undermine your happiness, making your achievements feel like something to be ashamed of rather than celebrated. If you've ever felt someone trying to distance themselves from you after a success, it's likely because your progress has made them uncomfortable. When someone close feels overshadowed by your growth, they may pull back, either gradually or suddenly, to avoid facing their own insecurities. It's a defense mechanism that keeps them from being reminded of their perceived failures. They may begin cancelling plans or becoming less available, leaving you to wonder what you've done wrong. In reality, it's their way of avoiding the discomfort of seeing someone they know succeed in areas where they feel they're struggling. In other cases, envy is expressed through spreading negativity or gossip. When someone feels left out or overshadowed, they may try to influence others' perceptions of you by sharing negative or false stories. This way, they shift focus from their own insecurities to finding faults in your character. It's a form of social sabotage, where they feel they regain control by turning others against you subtly. Gossiping allows them to undermine your reputation without having to confront their own issues. It's easier to paint you as the problem than to face the reality of their envy. A powerful way to respond to these hidden signals of envy is through empathy and understanding. Recognize that these reactions are often unconscious responses to feelings of inadequacy, and that they say more about the other person's struggles than about your worth. This insight allows you to avoid personalizing their behavior, staying grounded and confident in your achievements without feeling pressured to apologize for your success. It's not your responsibility to shrink so others feel comfortable. Instead, keep a compassionate perspective, realizing that some people simply don't know how to cope with their own insecurities in a healthy way. Maintaining your authenticity despite others' discomfort is key. By continuing to pursue your goals without apology, you remind yourself that your life isn't a competition. It's a unique journey, and each person is responsible for their path. Staying true to yourself requires strength, but it also serves as a silent encouragement to those who are open to seeing your success as a source of inspiration rather than a threat. Being authentic means living fully without adjusting your happiness to accommodate the insecurities of others. Having boundaries is essential when dealing with envious behavior. Not every reaction deserves your attention, and not everyone's opinions deserve a place in your life. When someone consistently tries to undermine your achievements, distance yourself without guilt. Create a safe space around you that protects your mental well-being. This doesn't mean you're shutting people out. It means you're prioritizing your peace. Remember, true friends will celebrate your successes, while those who don't have your best interests at heart may need to be kept at a distance. Navigating envy requires a strong sense of self-worth. It's easy to let others' reactions create self-doubt, but when you're grounded in your own value, these doubts fade. Self-worth isn't about needing validation from others. It's about recognizing your achievements for what they are, expressions of your hard work, dedication, and growth. Hold on to this truth and let it empower you to keep moving forward, regardless of who approves or disapproves. Cultivating resilience helps you remain steady in the face of envy. The more resilient you become, the less you're swayed by others' negativity. Resilience is a shield, allowing you to pursue your goals with focus and clarity, unaffected by the judgment or jealousy of others. Developing this inner strength gives you the freedom to continue evolving, knowing that your growth isn't dependent on others' approval. Choosing compassion over retaliation keeps your peace intact. When others act out of jealousy, it's easy to feel defensive, but responding with compassion rather than conflict allows you to preserve your energy. Understand that their envy is a reflection of their struggles, and show empathy where you can, without compromising your boundaries. Compassion doesn't mean allowing negativity into your life. It means recognizing others' pain without letting it disrupt your own path. Remember that your success doesn't need to be justified or minimized. Own your journey with pride, knowing that you've earned every step. Others may struggle with their feelings, but that's not your burden to carry. By embracing your achievements fully, you set an example that inspires those who are ready to rise alongside you, while gracefully letting go of those who aren't. In doing so, you continue moving forward with a heart open to growth and a mind free from the weight of others' insecurities. Moving through life with authenticity and determination can invite not only admiration, but also hidden tension, and sometimes even envy. But often, the root of these issues isn't just about success or perceived differences. It can also stem from miscommunications and misunderstandings that pile up and linger. Small, unspoken missteps can lead to major rifts, silently turning good intentions into hidden resentment. Without even realizing it, a single offhand comment or a moment of distraction can be misinterpreted, leaving both sides feeling unheard or misunderstood. The smallest communication gaps can build walls that may not come down easily, adding strain and distance to even the closest relationships. Let's look deeply into how these seemingly minor disconnects can lead to lasting divides, and how to bridge them in meaningful, constructive ways. Misunderstandings are often born from assumptions. When we assume that someone knows what we mean or that we understand them without clarifying, we invite misinterpretation. These assumptions stem from our own perceptions and beliefs, which can vary widely from person to person. For instance, when someone is having a difficult day, a simple "Are you okay?" can be received as supportive or as intrusive, depending on the listener's mood and frame of mind. When assumptions are left unchecked, they turn into a breeding ground for misunderstanding. Rather than assuming, taking a moment to clarify intentions can prevent conflicts before they even start. Asking questions with openness and without presumption creates space for honest communication, where both people feel understood. In fast-paced conversations, tone and body language play a crucial role, often more so than the words themselves. A well-meaning remark, if delivered with a distracted tone or crossed arms, can come across as dismissive or condescending. Body language is subtle, but its impact is deep. When tone and non-verbal cues don't match the message, they create confusion. It's easy to dismiss non-verbal cues, thinking that words alone are enough to convey meaning, but the human mind picks up on these signals instinctively. This is why paying attention to both what you say and how you say it matters. A thoughtful tone, direct eye contact, and open posture can transform a conversation, making it feel genuine and intentional. Silence, too, can be misunderstood, leading to feelings of neglect or indifference. When we don't communicate openly, others are left to interpret our silence. In the absence of explanation, people often assume the worst. Silence can appear as a lack of interest, even if you're simply busy or preoccupied. It's essential to understand that not all silence is golden. Sometimes silence hurts. When we're too caught up to respond, a simple acknowledgement like, "I'll get back to you soon," can prevent unnecessary worry. Clear communication about availability helps people feel valued and prevents them from drawing negative conclusions from a lack of response. Another barrier in communication is rooted in overthinking. Sometimes we overanalyze a situation or the meaning behind someone's words, adding our own anxieties to their message. This mental spiral creates interpretations that don't align with reality, leading to an emotional response based on fiction, not fact. For instance, someone might interpret a brief response as a sign of disinterest, whereas the person could simply be busy. Overthinking adds layers that distort the actual message, transforming a small exchange into a personal affront. By practicing self-awareness, we can catch ourselves before diving into over-analysis, grounding ourselves in what was actually said instead of what we feared it might mean. Timing is a less obvious but significant factor in misunderstandings. Bringing up sensitive issues at a stressful time can lead to defensive reactions, even when the intent was purely to address concerns. Timing plays a role in receptiveness. When someone's mind is elsewhere, they may misinterpret your words or feel cornered, leading to tension that wasn't intended. Paying attention to when and how we approach certain conversations can make a meaningful difference in how they unfold. Instead of diving into difficult topics immediately, waiting for a moment when both parties are calm can allow for a more open and thoughtful exchange. Listening, or the lack thereof, also fuels misunderstandings. Many people listen not to understand, but to respond. When we're only half listening, we miss the nuances in someone's words, leading to shallow or incomplete understanding. This partial attention leaves the other person feeling misunderstood, as if their words were brushed aside. Active listening requires full presence, making an effort to catch not only the words, but the emotions behind them. When someone feels genuinely heard, the likelihood of misunderstanding is reduced, replaced with a sense of connection. Good listening isn't passive. It's an engaged, responsive process that involves seeking clarity before reacting. Another critical aspect is clarity in language. Often we think we've communicated clearly, but the words we choose may have different meanings to different people. Phrases like, "we should talk more," or "I feel like you don't care," are vague and open to interpretation. When we leave statements open-ended, they're filled with personal interpretations based on each person's perspective. Instead of vague phrases, specific language helps avoid confusion. Saying, "Let's schedule a call to catch up weekly," or "It feels important to me when you ask about my day," provides clear guidance on what you need. Precision in communication reduces the room for interpretation, allowing intentions to be more easily understood. Frustration can arise from an inability to express complex emotions. Sometimes we feel a mix of emotions that we can't immediately put into words, and this emotional complexity can lead to misunderstandings. When our emotions are jumbled, it's easy for others to misinterpret our mood or intentions. Taking a moment to pause, reflect, and articulate what we feel before speaking can prevent confusion. Expressing emotions accurately, rather than projecting anger or sadness onto others without explanation, helps those around us respond with understanding rather than defensiveness. This thoughtful approach strengthens communication and helps avoid unnecessary friction. Expectations also play a hidden role in misunderstandings. Often, we expect people to know what we need without verbalizing it, assuming they'll naturally understand. When those expectations aren't met, frustration builds. For example, expecting a friend to reach out regularly but not expressing this desire can lead to feelings of neglect when they don't. Clear, expressed expectations prevent disappointment. By openly sharing our needs and boundaries, we allow others to respond genuinely. Expectations that remain unspoken lead to disappointment, creating tension based on assumptions rather than reality. Cultural differences can also create communication barriers. What seems like a harmless phrase or gesture in one culture can carry a different meaning in another. Even within the same language, regional or familial communication styles vary. Without an awareness of these differences, misunderstandings arise. Understanding and respecting these variations and taking the time to learn about others' backgrounds fosters empathy. This helps create an environment where intentions are interpreted accurately and cultural barriers are minimized. Awareness of diversity in communication styles encourages an inclusive, understanding approach that reduces the likelihood of unintentional offense. Emotional baggage, past experiences, and unresolved issues also distort communication. If someone has been hurt in a past relationship, they may approach new interactions with caution or even mistrust, projecting old hurts onto new people. This can lead to misinterpretations as they see behaviors through the lens of past experiences. Being aware of one's own emotional history and how it affects present interactions can help in responding thoughtfully rather than reactively. Awareness of personal triggers allows for a clearer, more authentic exchange, where responses aren't colored by old wounds. Overcommitment and stress lead to communication breakdowns as well. When people are overwhelmed, they have less patience and mental space to engage meaningfully. Stressful days often result in quick, curt replies or a lack of engagement, which can come across as disinterest or hostility. Recognizing when stress is affecting communication and being transparent about it helps set realistic expectations. Saying, "I'm under a lot of stress, so if I'm brief, it's not personal," goes a long way in maintaining positive relationships and preventing misunderstandings rooted in overcommitment. Misunderstandings thrive in relationships where there's a lack of trust. Trust allows for benefit of the doubt, making it easier to interpret others' words with compassion rather than suspicion. In relationships lacking trust, small comments are more likely to be perceived as attacks, leading to defensive reactions. Building trust takes time and consistent honesty. In environments where trust is cultivated, people feel safer to express themselves fully, knowing that missteps are met with understanding rather than judgment. Trust acts as a cushion, absorbing minor communication flaws without damaging the relationship. External influences, such as advice from friends or family, can also lead to misunderstandings. When others offer opinions or advice, it's easy to adopt their interpretations instead of forming our own. This external interference can distort our understanding of a situation. By staying mindful of external influences and grounding responses in personal judgment rather than others' perspectives, we maintain authenticity in our relationships. Seeking advice is natural, but letting outside opinions dominate our interactions can cloud genuine communication. One of the most overlooked causes of misunderstanding is the reluctance to clarify. Pride, fear, or discomfort can prevent people from asking for clarification, leaving misunderstandings unresolved. When clarification is avoided, assumptions solidify and resentment grows. By embracing curiosity and courage, misunderstandings can be prevented by simply asking, "What did you mean by that?" or "Can you help me understand your perspective?" This approach replaces guessing with clarity, fostering deeper understanding. Clear, authentic communication is an ongoing process. Misunderstandings will happen, but each of these factors offers an opportunity to learn, grow, and improve our connections with others. By becoming more aware of the subtle ways communication breaks down, we can engage with those around us in a way that reduces conflict and enhances mutual respect. Miscommunications, even the small ones, have a way of snowballing. What begins as a minor misunderstanding can gradually grow, pulling both parties into a cycle of confusion and hurt that wasn't there before. These subtle lapses in clarity or tone may seem inconsequential at first, but when left unaddressed, they sink deeper into the foundation of relationships, creating cracks that weaken trust. Small comments left unexplained, body language misread, or unspoken assumptions can all plant seeds of resentment that slowly grow, turning minor missteps into sources of conflict. By exploring the hidden impact of these subtle communication breakdowns, we can learn how to address them before they create lasting rifts. Minor miscommunications often start with assumptions. When someone assumes they understand a message without verifying, they create an interpretation based on their own feelings or perspectives, rather than the actual intent of the other person. These assumptions are small, but they quickly compound. For instance, one person might say, "I'll see you soon," intending warmth, while the other interprets it as an obligation or reluctance. Assumptions can warp even simple phrases, layering in a meaning that wasn't intended. Over time, these assumptions transform harmless exchanges into points of contention. To avoid this, verification is key. Confirming what someone meant, rather than jumping to conclusions, brings clarity and avoids miscommunication. Emotional tone can also distort meaning, especially if one person is in a different emotional state from the other. A casual comment made while one person is stressed may come across as dismissive or uncaring to someone in a more positive state of mind. These shifts in tone can seem insignificant, but over time they create an emotional disconnect. When emotional tones aren't aligned, misunderstandings increase, as one person perceives coldness or indifference, while the other is simply preoccupied. This discrepancy often leads to both sides feeling misunderstood and undervalued. Being mindful of emotional states or acknowledging when someone seems off creates space for open communication, preventing minor disconnects from developing into larger conflicts. Another subtle form of miscommunication occurs in phrasing choices. The way we word something can change its impact drastically. Phrasing like, "It would be nice if you could help out more," might feel harmless to one person, but could seem like a judgment to another. When phrasing is vague or indirect, it invites interpretation, and more often than not, people interpret words through the lens of their insecurities or assumptions. Direct, thoughtful language eliminates the guesswork, creating a space where intentions are clearly understood. By focusing on clarity in our phrasing, we reduce the chances of words being taken out of context, allowing both sides to feel respected and understood. Overly brief responses can create friction as well. While some people naturally keep their communication short and to the point, others may perceive brief responses as cold or dismissive. A simple fine in response to, "How are you?" can feel like an avoidance or a brush-off, even if the person saying it genuinely means they're okay. When brief responses are consistent, they slowly erode the warmth in communication, leaving one party feeling unvalued. Offering a little more detail, such as, "I'm fine, just a bit tired," can make a huge difference, showing that there's openness rather than dismissal. This attention to detail fosters trust and prevents small gaps from widening. Timing of responses is another overlooked aspect of minor miscommunications. A delayed response may seem trivial to one person, but might feel like neglect to another. When responses come much later than expected, especially in conversations where timeliness matters, one person can feel sidelined or unimportant. They might interpret the delay as a lack of care, even if the other person was simply busy or distracted. A quick acknowledgement like, "I saw your message, but I'll reply in full soon," can alleviate tension, preventing assumptions from taking hold. Timing reflects respect, and by managing it carefully, both sides feel valued. Interruptions, though often unintentional, create subtle rifts in communication. When one person interrupts, the other may feel invalidated, as if their words or thoughts don't matter. This can lead to feelings of frustration and resentment, even if the interruption wasn't meant to dismiss their perspective. Over time, repeated interruptions can make someone reluctant to share openly, creating distance. Pausing and allowing someone to finish before responding is a small gesture, but one that builds mutual respect, ensuring that both voices are fully heard. Miscommunication also arises when people interpret the same words differently. Language is complex, and what seems straightforward to one person may hold a different meaning for someone else. Simple phrases like soon or later carry subjective meanings and can cause misalignment when each person interprets them based on personal standards. One person might think soon means within an hour, while another considers it to mean within a day. Defining vague terms, even briefly, brings clarity and reduces the potential for misunderstandings. Clear language creates a shared understanding, making intentions transparent. In emotional conversations, lack of follow-up can add to miscommunication. When someone shares something personal or important, failing to follow up later can feel like disregard. They might feel that their concerns or feelings weren't taken seriously, leading to a sense of emotional distance. Follow-up, even in small ways, shows that you care beyond the immediate conversation, reinforcing the connection and preventing feelings of neglect. Remembering and acknowledging past conversations helps people feel valued and heard, showing that their experiences matter. Nonverbal cues play a huge role in miscommunication too. Facial expressions, gestures, and posture all convey messages, sometimes more strongly than words themselves. A simple eye roll or crossed arms can be misread as disinterest or judgment, even when that wasn't the intent. Misinterpreted body language creates unspoken tension, adding layers of discomfort to future interactions. Being mindful of body language and making it more intentional, smiling, nodding, maintaining open gestures, communicates genuine interest and openness, preventing minor nonverbal missteps from leading to emotional disconnect. When we communicate indirectly, expecting the other person to get it, we set the stage for misunderstanding. Many people struggle to say what they truly mean, resorting to hints or vague comments, hoping the other person will interpret correctly. This indirectness leads to frustration when the other person doesn't respond as expected. Clear, direct communication takes the guesswork out of interactions, reducing the emotional strain that comes from wondering if someone truly understood our needs or feelings. Saying exactly what we mean fosters transparency, allowing for smoother, more authentic exchanges. In close relationships, Repeating unaddressed behaviors can lead to built-up frustration, making minor issues seem far more significant than they are. If one person consistently leaves tasks incomplete, for example, the other may interpret it as disregard, even if there's no such intent. Addressing minor issues as they arise prevents them from accumulating into deeper resentments. By speaking up early, small habits don't have the chance to turn into recurring frustrations, allowing both parties to address concerns before they grow into conflicts. Communication that's too polite or formal in personal relationships can also create distance. While politeness is valuable, being overly formal can come across as insincere, especially among friends or family. People generally feel more connected through relaxed, natural language. When someone uses formal language in a familiar relationship, it might give the impression of detachment. Speaking in a warm, authentic tone helps maintain closeness and prevents the coldness that overly polite communication can create. Fear of confrontation leads many to avoid addressing small misunderstandings, but this avoidance allows them to grow. When people sidestep issues, it creates an environment where small irritations fester. For example, if someone frequently cancels plans at the last minute and the other person never addresses it, it can lead to built-up resentment. Addressing minor issues openly prevents them from becoming larger conflicts. Practicing gentle honesty, addressing behaviors without accusation, allows both sides to feel comfortable resolving minor issues before they escalate. Sarcasm or humor can also lead to miscommunication. While joking lightens conversation, it can sometimes mask real feelings or cause offense if misinterpreted. Sarcasm, in particular, can leave people questioning the true intent behind words. Using humor carefully and ensuring it aligns with the other person's sense of humor keeps interactions genuine and respectful. Avoiding sarcasm in serious conversations helps ensure that emotions are communicated clearly, reducing the risk of misunderstandings. Text-based communication, while convenient, lacks tone and nonverbal cues, making it prone to misinterpretation. What might be a harmless comment in person can appear curt or dismissive over text. For instance, a short reply like "okay" can feel blunt without additional context, leading to misunderstandings about tone. Adding small elements, like a smiley face or a clarifying sentence, can transform a message's tone, making it warmer and less ambiguous. In more serious matters, opting for voice or face-to-face communication when possible can prevent the misunderstandings common in text exchanges. Overlooking cultural or personal context contributes to miscommunication. Each person brings unique backgrounds and communication styles to interactions. A phrase that feels supportive in one culture might be seen as invasive in another. Personal context matters too. What feels comfortable for one person might not for another, based on their past experiences. Recognizing and respecting these individual differences fosters a space where intentions are less likely to be misinterpreted. Being attentive to personal and cultural context encourages empathy and helps bridge communication gaps, strengthening connections. These seemingly small miscommunications, when left unchecked, have a way of creating distance in relationships, leading to conflicts that might seem trivial but are felt deeply. By recognizing how these minor misunderstandings unfold, we gain the power to prevent deeper rifts. Through attention to tone, phrasing, timing, and clarity, we can bring greater authenticity and mutual respect into our interactions, keeping minor missteps from transforming into lasting conflicts. When minor miscommunications pile up, they can lead to feelings of unease and misunderstanding. But sometimes, the divide runs deeper than mere words. Clashing values and beliefs can create an almost invisible barrier between people, leading to tension that's not easily resolved. These conflicts aren't about simple misunderstandings or timing issues. They strike at the core of who we are and what we hold dear. Such differences can cause strain, frustration, or even resentment when both sides feel misunderstood or invalidated. These moments reveal how essential it is to approach differing values with both understanding and patience, allowing for meaningful connections even amid deeply rooted differences. When values clash, it often begins with the feeling that another person's beliefs are challenging our own. When we see someone living in a way that contradicts our values, it can feel unsettling, almost as if their choices are a critique of ours. For example, someone who values traditional family roles might struggle to understand or accept the lifestyle of someone who believes in independence or non-traditional partnerships. This doesn't mean that either person's values are inherently right or wrong, but their different perspectives can lead to an underlying tension. If left unaddressed, this tension grows, subtly affecting how they interact. By recognizing that our values are personal guides, not universal rules, we can begin to see others' choices with less judgment, fostering a sense of respect even when we disagree. The language of values is complex, often rooted in culture, upbringing, and personal experiences. What one person sees as a moral necessity, another might view as restrictive or unnecessary. These differences become particularly challenging when both sides feel that their values are essential to their identity. For instance, a person raised to value modesty might feel uncomfortable around someone with a more liberal view of self-expression. This isn't a matter of who's right, but of perspective. Such deep-rooted beliefs are difficult to alter because they're woven into our sense of self. Recognizing this, it's essential to approach differences with the understanding that values are personal. They are reflections of what each person needs to feel complete. Accepting that others may not see the world as we do allows space for mutual respect without forcing either side to compromise their beliefs. The human mind often seeks validation from others, and this need can exacerbate value-based conflicts. When our values aren't shared by others, we may feel isolated or even defensive, as if our way of life is under threat. For example, a person deeply invested in environmental sustainability might feel disheartened by someone who doesn't prioritize eco-friendly choices. This divide doesn't necessarily make one person superior. It simply highlights the contrasting priorities that individuals have. The solution isn't convincing others to adopt our values, but finding ways to coexist respectfully. When we can let go of the need for others to share our values, we free ourselves from unnecessary conflict and open ourselves to new perspectives, embracing diversity without feeling that our beliefs are being challenged. Expectations can deepen the impact of value clashes. When we assume that others will share our beliefs simply because they're close to us, we set ourselves up for disappointment. It's natural to think that those who are important in our lives will see the world as we do, but this isn't always the case. A parent might expect their child to uphold family traditions, while the child feels compelled to carve their own path. This expectation creates tension, often leading to disappointment and frustration on both sides. By letting go of the assumption that others must share our values, we create a space for genuine connection, unburdened by unmet expectations. This acceptance nurtures healthier relationships, where differences are embraced as unique traits rather than barriers. Another dimension of clashing values lies in societal norms, which often dictate what is considered acceptable. Society's influence can pressure individuals to conform, even when those norms conflict with personal beliefs. For instance, someone raised in a culture that values individual success might feel out of place among people who prioritize communal or family achievements. This pressure can make people feel alienated, torn between societal expectations and personal beliefs. Recognizing that societal norms are not absolute truths, but collective agreements, helps us respect each person's choices, allowing individuals to live by their values without feeling pressured to conform. Accepting that there is no single way to live offers freedom for everyone to pursue a life that feels authentic. Sometimes, clashing values highlight fears that people carry. When someone challenges our beliefs, it can make us question our own life choices, leading to discomfort. If we've built a life around certain principles, seeing others live differently may stir doubts or insecurities. For instance, someone who values stability might feel threatened by someone who embraces a free-spirited, risk-taking lifestyle. The clash isn't simply about values, but about the subconscious fears that arise when our way of life is called into question. By identifying these fears, we can approach such differences with curiosity rather than defensiveness, asking ourselves why someone else's values feel threatening. This introspection opens doors to deeper self-understanding, allowing us to accept others without feeling compelled to defend our own choices. Communication becomes challenging when values clash, because each person feels strongly that their perspective is valid. When both sides are rooted in their beliefs, discussions often turn into debates, with each person trying to convince the other rather than seeking understanding. In these moments, a calm approach becomes invaluable. Instead of attempting to change someone's mind, practicing active listening and asking questions to understand their perspective shifts the focus from debate to dialogue. This approach fosters respect, as each person feels heard rather than challenged. When we listen to understand rather than to respond, we create a space where differing values can coexist, making room for empathy and shared humanity. It's common for people to assume that differences in values mean a lack of compatibility, but this isn't always true. Many meaningful relationships thrive despite value differences because both parties are willing to see beyond them. When we approach relationships with an open mind, we realize that compatibility isn't about identical values, but about mutual respect. Even if two people have opposing views, they can still find common ground by focusing on shared goals, humor, or experiences. Embracing differences as strengths rather than weaknesses allows relationships to grow in diverse ways, where both parties appreciate each other's uniqueness without feeling the need to alter their core beliefs. Conflicts over values often reveal the boundaries we place around ourselves. Boundaries are necessary for personal well-being, but they can also create emotional walls that prevent meaningful connections. For example, someone who values independence may set firm boundaries to protect their freedom, while someone who values closeness might interpret these boundaries as rejection. Recognizing that boundaries are not meant to offend, but to honor individual needs, helps bridge the divide between differing values. By respecting each person's boundaries, we can maintain relationships that are supportive rather than restrictive, where values coexist without the need to infringe upon one another's personal space. When people don't feel accepted for their values, they may become defensive, even in subtle ways. This defensiveness can appear as a need to constantly justify one's beliefs, making every interaction feel like a battle for validation. For instance, someone who values minimalism may feel pressured to explain their lifestyle choices in a consumer-driven society. This defensiveness, however, only fuels conflict. By accepting that not everyone needs to understand or approve of our values, we release the need for validation, finding peace within ourselves. When we no longer seek others' approval for our beliefs, we communicate from a place of calm rather than defense, reducing the potential for conflict. Family dynamics often amplify value clashes, especially when multiple generations are involved. Generational gaps bring distinct perspectives shaped by different times, experiences, and social changes. A grandparent may hold traditional beliefs that their grandchildren don't share, leading to misunderstandings. Each generation's values are shaped by unique cultural influences, and expecting uniformity across generations leads to frustration. Acknowledging generational differences with openness can reduce conflict, allowing each person to feel respected in their own perspective. When families view these differences as opportunities for learning rather than sources of tension, they create an environment where each member can express themselves freely, fostering unity despite diversity. Value clashes sometimes cause people to distance themselves, avoiding situations or conversations that might bring conflict. While space is sometimes necessary, distancing too much can lead to a gradual breakdown of the relationship. Avoidance prevents resolution, allowing minor disagreements to become silent divides. Instead, engaging with compassion and openness, even when values differ, helps maintain connection. It's possible to set boundaries without building walls. Rather than withdrawing, choosing respectful engagement reinforces relationships, showing that differences in values don't have to mean separation. At times, values clash within ourselves, where personal growth challenges old beliefs. As people evolve, they may find themselves questioning values they once held dear. This internal conflict can reflect outwardly, causing tension with others who still share those old values. For instance, someone who grew up valuing ambition might shift toward valuing simplicity, leading to misunderstandings with friends who continue to prioritize success. This internal journey requires patience and self-compassion, allowing space for growth while recognizing that others may not be on the same path. Embracing personal evolution without expecting others to follow creates harmony within and respect for the unique journeys of those around us. Clashing values often reveal how deeply we're influenced by our environments. Community, family, and social circles all shape beliefs, sometimes subconsciously. When someone from a different environment introduces a new perspective, it can feel uncomfortable, as if our familiar worldview is being questioned. Understanding that our values are influenced by external factors can help us approach new perspectives with curiosity rather than suspicion. By seeing value differences as a chance to broaden our worldview, we gain insight into diverse ways of living, enriching our understanding of the world and breaking down the mental walls that separate us. Differences in values can sometimes push people to redefine their priorities. When we encounter people who see the world differently, it encourages reflection on what truly matters. These encounters challenge us to either reinforce our beliefs or adapt, leading to personal growth. Someone who values career success might, upon meeting someone who values family time, reconsider how they balance their life. These moments of reflection encourage us to refine our values consciously, making choices that resonate more deeply with our true selves. By viewing differing values as an opportunity for self-reflection, we turn conflict into a journey of personal discovery. Navigating clashing values requires understanding, resilience, and an open heart. While differences can create tension, they also offer a path to deeper connections. Through respect, acceptance, and a commitment to honest communication, we find that even contrasting beliefs can coexist in harmony, enriching relationships rather than dividing them. Embracing value differences with grace allows us to build bridges over gaps, strengthening bonds without requiring anyone to compromise their individuality. In close relationships, clashing values can quietly set the stage for tension, even when there's genuine care and respect. Unlike visible disagreements, this tension is often unspoken, lingering beneath everyday interactions and slowly affecting the bond between people. When fundamental beliefs don't align, Both sides may feel a subtle disconnect, as if they're moving in slightly different directions without realizing it. It's not necessarily about having different goals or preferences, but about how each person's deeply held values shape their choices and worldview. Over time, these differences can create a sense of distance that's hard to pinpoint, yet impossible to ignore. Core values are often deeply ingrained, reflecting our most personal beliefs about life, relationships, and purpose. They guide us in our decision-making and influence what we prioritize. When we encounter someone with different core values, it can feel as if there's a gap in understanding, even if the relationship is positive overall. For example, someone who values independence might feel tension around a person who values togetherness above all else. The independent person may feel overwhelmed, while the other feels neglected or unimportant. This difference creates a quiet friction that both parties might sense but struggle to articulate. Recognizing this tension as a natural outcome of differing values rather than as a personal flaw can help reduce misunderstandings, allowing both people to approach each other with empathy. Often, underlying tension arises from unmet expectations rooted in our core beliefs. When one person expects a certain behavior based on their values, they may feel frustrated if the other person doesn't meet those expectations. For instance, someone who values timeliness might feel disrespected when their friend frequently arrives late, even if the friend means no harm. This difference in priorities leads to silent frustration, which can accumulate over time. Addressing these expectations openly can bridge the gap, allowing both sides to understand each other's priorities. By expressing values and needs clearly, each person can decide how to meet in the middle, reducing the potential for resentment. Differences in values also impact communication styles, creating a hidden layer of tension. When one person values directness while the other prefers a more gentle approach, even simple conversations can feel tense. The direct communicator may view the gentle communicator as evasive, while the gentle communicator perceives directness as harsh. These misunderstandings shape the emotional tone of interactions, leaving each person feeling that their communication style isn't respected. To ease this tension, both parties must recognize that neither style is superior. Instead, they can adopt a flexible approach, adjusting their communication to suit the context and each other's comfort. This balance shows respect for each other's values and helps foster more harmonious interactions. Clashing values can also influence perspectives on success and fulfillment, adding another layer of tension. For example, someone who values career success might feel disconnected from a partner or friend who prioritizes personal well-being or family. The career-focused individual may interpret their friend's choices as a lack of ambition, while the other person feels pressured to pursue goals that don't align with their priorities. This difference can make conversations about life goals feel strained, as both people struggle to validate each other's viewpoints. Recognizing that each person's version of fulfillment is unique helps reduce tension. By honoring each other's paths, even if they differ, both people can feel more understood and valued. Core values also shape how people handle challenges and setbacks. Someone who values resilience might see adversity as a growth opportunity, while a person who values security might feel the need to avoid risks. When these perspectives clash, tension arises, especially in decision-making situations. The resilient person may feel frustrated by what they see as a lack of courage, while the security-focused person may feel that risk-taking is reckless. These differences can make it challenging to support each other's decisions, even if the relationship is otherwise strong. By recognizing the value in each approach, both people can learn to appreciate the strengths in each other's responses to difficulty, reducing judgment and enhancing mutual respect. Financial values are another area where differences can create tension, especially in close relationships. Someone who values saving may struggle with a partner who believes in enjoying life's pleasures without worrying excessively about money. The saver may feel anxious about future security, while the spender feels restricted by financial caution. This tension builds silently over time, as each person may feel misunderstood or criticized for their choices. Open discussions about financial goals, without judgment, can help each person understand the motivations behind the other's values. This understanding promotes compromise, allowing both to feel that their priorities are respected. Personal boundaries are also affected by core values, leading to tension when they don't align. Someone who values personal space may feel overwhelmed by a friend or partner who values constant togetherness. The desire for space may be seen as distance or coldness by the other person, who feels rejected or unloved. Without open communication, these different needs can create ongoing frustration. By discussing boundaries openly and without judgment, both people can establish a balance that respects each other's comfort. This understanding prevents misunderstandings and allows each person to meet their needs without feeling pressured to compromise their core values. In addition, values shape perspectives on responsibility and obligations. Someone who believes strongly in fulfilling duties may feel uncomfortable around a person who takes a more relaxed approach. For example, a person who values family obligations may feel disappointed by a friend who prioritizes personal freedom over family gatherings. This difference can create tension, as the duty-oriented individual may feel let down, while the freedom-oriented person feels pressured to conform. By acknowledging that each person's sense of responsibility is personal, both sides can find ways to show respect without feeling burdened by expectations that don't align with their values. Different approaches to conflict resolution, guided by core values, can also be a source of tension. One person may value addressing issues directly, while the other prefers a more reflective approach. In disagreements, these contrasting styles can create frustration, as the direct person feels the other is avoiding the issue, while the reflective person feels rushed or pressured. These differences often make it difficult to reach a resolution, with both people feeling unheard. By respecting each other's conflict resolution styles and finding a middle ground, both parties can engage in a way that feels safe and productive, reducing the tension that naturally arises from differing values. Values often play a role in lifestyle choices, influencing how people structure their daily lives. For instance, someone who values productivity may find it hard to understand a partner who prioritizes relaxation and self-care. The productivity-driven individual might see relaxation as laziness, while the other feels judged for their need to recharge. This tension can spill over into daily interactions, affecting how each person views the other's habits. By recognizing that both productivity and relaxation have value, each person can respect the other's lifestyle without feeling pressured to adopt it. Accepting these differences encourages a supportive environment where both approaches are valued. The way people view friendships and social connections is also shaped by values, which can lead to tension. Someone who values loyalty may feel hurt when a friend spends time with others, while someone who values independence may feel that friendship should allow for flexibility. This difference can create tension, as the loyalty-driven person feels abandoned, while the independence-valuing person feels restricted. By openly discussing friendship expectations, both people can understand each other's needs better, reducing the potential for hurt feelings. This conversation fosters trust, allowing each person to maintain their friendships without feeling constrained by differing expectations. Family values, too, can cause underlying tension when they don't align. When one person places high importance on family bonds, they may feel distant from someone who views family differently. For instance, a person who values frequent family gatherings might feel unsupported by a partner who sees family time as occasional rather than constant. This difference can cause subtle friction, as both sides feel that the other doesn't appreciate their perspective. Acknowledging and respecting each other's approach to family involvement can help reduce this tension, allowing each person to feel secure in their values without feeling pressured to change. Core values also influence attitudes toward health and wellness, creating tension when they clash. Someone who prioritizes health and fitness may feel frustrated by a partner or friend who places less emphasis on these areas. The health-conscious person may feel unsupported in their goals, while the other person feels judged or pressured to change their habits. This difference in priorities can lead to silent frustration, affecting how they view each other's lifestyle choices. By accepting that health is a personal journey, both sides can support each other's goals without imposing expectations, reducing the potential for tension and encouraging mutual respect. Different values around emotional expression can create subtle tension as well. For example, someone who values openness and emotional vulnerability may feel distant from a partner or friend who values emotional restraint. The expressive person may feel that the other is withholding, while the restrained individual feels overwhelmed by open displays of emotion. Without understanding, both sides can feel misunderstood, creating a quiet but lasting divide. By learning to appreciate each other's approach to emotions, both people can feel more accepted, fostering a sense of closeness even when their values around expression differ. Work-life balance, shaped by core values, is another area where differences can lead to tension. Someone who values career success may struggle with a partner who prioritizes family time over work. This difference often leads to unspoken frustration, as the career-driven person feels unsupported, while the family-focused individual feels that work is taking priority over personal connections. Recognizing the importance of both perspectives allows each person to balance their priorities without feeling pressured to compromise their values, creating a more supportive and understanding relationship. Spirituality and belief systems rooted in core values can also be a source of tension when they differ. One person's sense of meaning and purpose may be deeply tied to their spirituality, while another may find purpose in personal achievements or relationships. These differences can make it difficult to connect on a deeper level, especially if one person feels that their beliefs are undervalued. Respecting each other's sources of meaning without expecting agreement helps reduce this tension, allowing each person to honor their beliefs without feeling isolated or invalidated. Understanding how differences in core values can create underlying tension is a powerful step toward building stronger, more harmonious relationships. By recognizing these points of friction and approaching them with empathy, both sides can maintain their individuality while fostering a connection that respects and values their unique perspectives. This approach strengthens bonds, allowing differences to coexist peacefully, even enriching the relationship by offering new ways of seeing the world. When values and beliefs clash, they can create a quiet strain in relationships, but sometimes the harm comes not just from differing perspectives, but from words spoken behind closed doors. Gossip and rumors have a unique way of unraveling trust, spreading misunderstandings, and breeding resentment. A single piece of unverified information or a twisted version of the truth can ripple out, damaging reputations, relationships, and even self-worth. Gossip often thrives on exaggeration, feeding on people's insecurities and fueling silent judgments. The destructive power of gossip isn't always loud. It works in subtle, insidious ways that slowly erode the foundations of trust. Gossip often begins as casual conversation, but can quickly escalate into harmful narratives. Sometimes people start by discussing others with seemingly harmless intentions, perhaps to share concern or vent frustrations. But as these conversations circulate, details can change, intensify, or lose context, turning the original message into something much more damaging. For example, a simple comment about someone's recent choices can evolve into a story about poor judgment or questionable character. These small changes might seem insignificant, but they compound as they're passed along, leading to assumptions and opinions based on half-truths. Gossip thrives on this distortion, taking on a life of its own as it moves through different voices, each adding or altering the original story. Rumors, in particular, often grow from seeds of ambiguity. When details are missing or unclear, people tend to fill in the gaps, assuming intentions or adding interpretations that may not be true. For instance, if a colleague leaves work suddenly, others might start speculating about the reasons, creating stories to satisfy their curiosity. These speculations, even when unfounded, can damage someone's reputation, leading others to view them through a distorted lens. This filling in the blanks process can change the way people are perceived, even without any actual evidence. Once a rumor takes hold, it's challenging to counteract, as people tend to believe what they hear, especially if it aligns with their biases or assumptions. One of the reasons gossip holds such power is because it often preys on people's insecurities. When individuals feel uncertain about themselves, they may be more inclined to judge or criticize others. Gossiping provides a temporary sense of superiority, allowing people to deflect attention from their own flaws or struggles. By focusing on someone else's perceived mistakes, they shift the narrative away from their insecurities, temporarily boosting their self-esteem. However, this form of relief is fleeting, and over time, it deepens a cycle of negativity where individuals rely on bringing others down to feel better about themselves. This cycle not only harms the targets of gossip, but also keeps those who engage in it trapped in a loop of self-doubt and judgment. The harm of gossip is compounded by the fact that it often reaches the subject indirectly. Instead of hearing feedback directly, individuals find out through whispers or changed behaviors from others, creating feelings of isolation and betrayal. When someone realizes they've been the subject of gossip, it affects their sense of trust, not just in those involved, but in people more generally. They may feel embarrassed, confused, or even paranoid, wondering who else might have been listening. The indirect nature of gossip makes it especially hurtful, as it robs people of the opportunity to clarify or defend themselves. They're left to wonder what others think or believe, creating a sense of uncertainty that can erode self-confidence. Another damaging aspect of gossip is that it often targets people during their vulnerable moments. When someone is going through a challenging time, they may make choices that others don't understand or agree with, providing fuel for gossip. Instead of offering support or empathy, people discuss these choices in judgmental ways, spreading narratives that misrepresent the person's true intentions or circumstances. This lack of compassion deepens the harm of gossip, as it kicks people when they're down, making their struggles feel even more isolating. The true cost of gossip lies in its ability to magnify people's hardships, making them feel judged at times when they most need understanding. Gossip can also disrupt group dynamics, creating divisions that make cooperation and mutual respect difficult. In workplaces, for example, gossip can undermine team unity as people begin to question each other's loyalty or intentions. If a rumor spreads about one person receiving special treatment or taking credit for others' work, it can create resentment among colleagues, even if the rumor is false. This tension hinders productivity, as people become more focused on office politics than on collaborative goals. Gossip creates an environment of suspicion where people hesitate to trust each other, fearing that anything they say might be twisted or used against them. This atmosphere disrupts both professional and personal relationships, fostering a culture of mistrust. The presence of gossip can also cause people to withhold information or ideas, fearing that their words might be taken out of context and shared inappropriately. When people sense that others are quick to spread stories or speculate, they become guarded, limiting open communication. This fear of being misinterpreted or judged can stifle creativity and prevent people from sharing valuable insights or perspectives. In relationships too, gossip discourages honesty, as individuals worry that their vulnerabilities might become the next topic of conversation. By creating an environment where people are afraid to speak openly, gossip restricts authentic connections, leaving individuals feeling distant and disconnected. Social media has amplified the effects of gossip, allowing rumors to spread more quickly and widely than ever before. A single post or comment can reach countless people within moments, escalating a private issue into a public spectacle. Social media often rewards sensationalism, meaning that exaggerated or shocking stories get more attention, regardless of their accuracy. This rapid spread makes it nearly impossible to contain gossip once it begins, as information moves faster than individuals can respond. The digital nature of social media also encourages detachment, making it easier for people to share or comment on stories without considering the impact on the person involved. In this environment, gossip is amplified, as people feel emboldened to share without the accountability that face-to-face interactions often impose. Rumors and gossip not only affect relationships, but can also impact mental health. When someone is aware that they're being talked about, it can lead to feelings of anxiety, depression, and isolation. Constantly worrying about what others might be saying creates a heightened sense of self-consciousness, making everyday interactions feel stressful. This emotional toll can affect self-esteem, as individuals begin to internalize the negative narratives circulating about them. Over time, the weight of gossip can erode confidence, leaving people feeling less capable or valued. In severe cases, the mental strain of gossip can lead to withdrawal from social interactions, as individuals try to protect themselves from further judgment or pain. For those engaging in gossip, the habit can be just as damaging. Participating in gossip may provide a temporary sense of belonging or power, but it ultimately fosters a negative mindset. People who gossip frequently may find themselves focusing more on others' flaws than on their own growth, limiting their potential for self-improvement. This habit encourages a perspective rooted in judgment rather than empathy, creating a cycle where individuals derive satisfaction from others' difficulties. Over time, this mindset can become ingrained, making it difficult for habitual gossipers to build authentic connections or to see others in a positive light. By focusing on the negative, they miss out on opportunities to cultivate kindness, support, and understanding. Breaking free from the cycle of gossip requires intentionality and self-awareness. It involves recognizing the impulse to discuss others and actively choosing not to engage. One approach is to redirect conversations toward constructive topics, focusing on shared interests or personal experiences rather than other people's lives. By steering conversations away from gossip, individuals can build relationships based on mutual respect and genuine interest. This shift not only strengthens personal integrity, but also fosters an environment where people feel safe and valued, knowing they won't become the subject of negative talk. When people commit to breaking the gossip habit, they contribute to a culture of trust and respect that benefits everyone. Another way to counteract gossip is by practicing empathy. When hearing stories about others, taking a moment to consider what they might be experiencing can shift the perspective from judgment to understanding. Recognizing that everyone has struggles and moments of vulnerability encourages compassion, reducing the urge to criticize or speculate. By actively choosing empathy, people can change the tone of their conversations, focusing on ways to support rather than judge. This approach not only reduces gossip, but also strengthens relationships, as people feel valued for who they are rather than scrutinized for their choices. Addressing gossip directly is another approach to minimizing its impact. When someone becomes aware of a rumor involving them, confronting it calmly and confidently can prevent it from spreading further. By addressing the issue openly, individuals can correct misinformation and demonstrate that they won't allow their reputation to be shaped by rumors. This proactive response sends a message that gossip is unwelcome, setting a boundary that discourages others from engaging in similar behavior. Although confronting gossip can be uncomfortable, it empowers individuals to protect their integrity, reclaiming control over their narrative and dispelling false assumptions. Fostering a culture of accountability can also reduce gossip's influence. Encouraging open communication and direct feedback creates an environment where people feel comfortable addressing concerns without resorting to behind-the-back talk. In workplaces, for instance, a culture that values transparency and constructive criticism limits the power of gossip, as people are encouraged to voice their opinions openly. In friendships and families, promoting honest discussions can prevent misunderstandings from festering into rumors. By prioritizing accountability, people establish a foundation of trust, where issues are resolved directly rather than being spread as gossip. Gossip and rumors thrive in environments where boundaries are weak or unclear. Setting boundaries in conversations, such as politely declining to discuss others' personal matters, signals a commitment to respect and integrity. By clearly defining what is and isn't acceptable in conversation, people can create a space where gossip is discouraged. Boundaries help maintain focus on positive and meaningful topics, reducing the temptation to speculate or judge. This proactive approach to boundary setting contributes to healthier relationships, where individuals are confident that their personal lives will remain private and respected. The destructive power of gossip and rumors lies in their ability to spread silently, creating doubt, distrust, and damage that is often difficult to repair. By understanding the ways in which gossip infiltrates relationships and personal well-being, we gain the tools to resist its pull and to foster environments of respect, empathy, and trust. Through intentionality, empathy, and accountability, we can create a culture that values truth and understanding over sensationalism, building connections that are strong, genuine, and rooted in kindness. Stories told by others have a unique power. They can shape perceptions, alter emotions, and even change relationships, all without your involvement or awareness. These third-party narratives can be subtle, yet highly influential, slipping into conversations and slowly shaping others' views of you. Often, it's not malicious intent that drives these stories. They might begin as simple observations or opinions, but as they are retold, details get lost, opinions harden, and suddenly, people you once trusted start viewing you differently. When someone else's words lead others to question or distance themselves from you, it leaves a lasting impact, creating tension that's hard to trace or resolve. One of the ways third-party stories gain influence is through selective storytelling. When someone shares a story about you, they're unlikely to provide a complete, balanced account. Instead, they may emphasize certain details that align with their perspective or omit information that could change the listener's interpretation. For example, a friend may mention a decision you made without explaining the context, leading others to see your actions as careless or impulsive. Without knowing the full story, listeners may begin forming judgments that stick with them, affecting how they perceive your character and intentions. This partial storytelling is especially harmful because it creates assumptions that feel valid to the listener, even though they're based on an incomplete understanding. Another powerful aspect of third-party narratives is the influence of tone and delivery. When people share stories, their tone and expressions subtly color the listener's perception. A sarcastic tone, a raised eyebrow, or a well-placed sigh can shift a story's meaning dramatically. For instance, a comment like, "Oh, they're always so independent," might sound like praise in a neutral tone, but when said with a hint of irritation, it implies criticism. Listeners absorb these tonal cues subconsciously, taking away impressions that align more with the storyteller's feelings than with the facts. This transfer of bias can skew others' views of you without you ever being aware of it, planting seeds of doubt or discomfort that might not exist if they had experienced the situation firsthand. Group dynamics also play a crucial role in the spread of third-party stories. When people gather, they often look for topics that will engage everyone's interest, and personal stories can be an easy choice. Once a story about you enters the conversation, it gains the weight of collective agreement as others chime in, share their perspectives, or even add their own experiences with you. In these situations, opinions can quickly solidify, as everyone in the group forms a consensus based on shared stories rather than direct interactions. This collective reinforcement makes the narrative feel truer to each person involved, leading to a unified but often inaccurate view of your character or intentions. Without your presence, there's no chance to clarify or correct, leaving you subject to a group judgment that's hard to break. Sometimes, third-party stories are passed on by those who don't know you well or who have only seen a limited side of you. These acquaintances may interpret behaviors or comments through their own limited perspective, creating an incomplete picture. For example, a co-worker might see you as overly ambitious because they only witness you in a work setting, unaware of the balance you bring to other areas of your life. When they share their view with others, their limited understanding becomes the foundation of others' perceptions, framing you in a way that doesn't reflect your true self. This one-dimensional perspective can lead people to misunderstand your intentions, as they're forming their views based on a sliver of who you are. The nature of human memory also contributes to the distortion of third-party stories. Each time a story is retold, it's subject to the storyteller's memory, which can alter details without them realizing it. Over time, small changes accumulate, and a story that was once accurate becomes less reliable. For example, a friend might recall a conversation where you were frustrated, but as they retell it, they might unconsciously exaggerate your tone or words, making you appear angrier or more intense than you were. As these exaggerations spread, they create a reputation that doesn't align with reality. Memory's fallibility means that third-party stories often carry an element of fiction, even when there's no ill intent, leading people to form judgments based on a distorted version of events. Third-party stories can also gain credibility through the principle of repetition. When people hear the same narrative from multiple sources, they're more likely to believe it, assuming that consistent repetition must indicate truth. For example, if a rumor about your supposed unreliability is mentioned by different acquaintances, listeners may assume it's accurate, even if none of the storytellers witnessed any unreliability firsthand. This effect can quickly build momentum as people trust the accumulated weight of repeated stories rather than questioning their origin. Repetition gives third-party stories an authority that's hard to counter, as others feel justified in believing what they've heard multiple times, no matter how distorted or unfounded the claims might be. Social media has intensified the impact of third-party stories, as platforms amplify narratives far beyond one-on-one conversations. A single post, comment, or share can reach a wide audience, making private perceptions public. Once shared online, these narratives are no longer confined to close circles. They're available for anyone to read, interpret, and spread further. Social media's speed and reach mean that any story, accurate or not, can quickly become part of a larger narrative about you, accessible to people who have no context for the story's origin. The digital footprint of these stories is difficult to erase, as once something is posted, it can be shared indefinitely, continuing to shape opinions about you far beyond your immediate control. In close-knit communities, third-party stories have an even greater impact, as people often know each other and rely on shared information to form opinions. In these settings, stories spread rapidly, as people feel a sense of familiarity with those involved, even if they don't know them personally. For instance, if a neighbor shares a story about your family's recent decisions, others in the community might assume they understand your family dynamics, forming judgments based on hearsay rather than personal experience. This creates a web of assumptions that can affect how others treat you or your family, influencing your reputation within the community without your direct involvement. In such settings, third-party stories can linger, creating lasting impressions that are hard to change. Power dynamics can also amplify the effect of third-party stories, especially when the storyteller holds influence or authority. When a respected person shares an opinion or story, listeners may accept it without question, assuming the storyteller's credibility gives weight to their words. For instance, if a manager subtly criticizes an employee in front of others, those who look up to the manager might adopt the same perspective without investigating it for themselves. The manager's position adds credibility to their words, creating a ripple effect that influences others' views of the employee. This use of influence can shape perceptions deeply, as listeners assume that those in authority have reliable insights, even when they may be biased or incomplete. The emotional content of third-party stories also contributes to their impact. People are drawn to stories that evoke strong emotions, such as anger, sympathy, or curiosity, and are more likely to remember and repeat them. If a story about you includes elements of drama or conflict, it becomes more memorable and compelling, encouraging others to share it further. For example, if someone shares a story portraying you as insensitive during a disagreement, listeners may feel emotionally invested in the narrative, developing empathy for the storyteller or even anger toward you. The emotional weight of these stories can shape others' perceptions of you, as people remember the emotional impact of the story rather than the facts. The effects of third-party stories are further compounded by confirmation bias, where people interpret new information to confirm their existing beliefs. If someone already has doubts or reservations about you, they're more likely to accept negative stories as confirmation of their suspicions. For example, if a colleague already views you as competitive, a third-party story emphasizing your ambition might reinforce their perception, even if it's exaggerated or taken out of context. Confirmation bias makes people more receptive to stories that align with their assumptions, reinforcing opinions that might not reflect your true character. This bias can entrench misunderstandings, as others selectively focus on information that supports their preconceptions. Over time, third-party stories can lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy, where people begin to act in ways that align with the narrative they've heard about you. If someone believes that you're unapproachable based on hearsay, they might interact with you more guardedly, causing tension that reinforces their initial perception. This cycle strengthens the influence of third-party stories, as the reactions they inspire create behaviors that seem to confirm the original narrative. In this way, others' assumptions shape interactions, creating a reality where misunderstandings become ingrained and harder to dispel. Navigating the impact of third-party stories requires resilience and self-awareness. While you can't control what others say, you can choose how to respond, focusing on clear communication and integrity in your interactions. By consistently showing your true character, you offer others a direct counterpoint to the narratives they may have heard. Over time, genuine interactions can challenge assumptions, encouraging others to see beyond the stories and form their own opinions. In this way, resilience and authenticity become tools for breaking the cycle of third-party influence, allowing you to reclaim control over your reputation. Building strong relationships can also counteract the effects of third-party stories. When people know you well, they're less likely to be swayed by outside opinions, as they have first-hand experiences to draw from. Trusting relationships create a foundation of understanding that's harder to shake, even when rumors circulate. By investing in authentic connections, you strengthen the resilience of your reputation, creating a network of people who view you based on personal knowledge rather than external stories. These connections act as a buffer, reducing the impact of third-party narratives by grounding others' perceptions in truth. Educating yourself on common psychological biases, such as confirmation bias and repetition effect, can help you understand why third-party stories hold so much influence. Recognizing these patterns allows you to approach situations with greater empathy, understanding that people aren't always aware of the biases shaping their opinions. By addressing these biases in a respectful way, you can encourage others to question the narratives they hear, fostering a more critical and balanced perspective. Ultimately, the power of third-party stories lies in their ability to create perceptions without your knowledge, shaping how others view you in subtle, lasting ways. By staying grounded in authenticity, building strong relationships, and understanding the psychology behind these narratives, you can begin to counteract their influence, allowing your true character to shine through even amid the shadows of others' words. When others carry insecurities, they often unconsciously project these feelings onto those around them. This type of projection can be subtle yet powerful, influencing how they interpret your actions, intentions, and character. Whether it's self-doubt, fears, or frustrations, these insecurities seep into interactions, causing them to see flaws in you that truly reflect their own inner battles. You may notice criticism that seems unwarranted or judgment that doesn't align with your behavior, all stemming from someone else's struggle with themselves. This hidden layer of interaction can complicate relationships, as others' personal insecurities create shadows that obscure who you truly are. Projection often manifests as criticism that feels out of place. When someone feels insecure about an aspect of their own life, they might shift their focus to you, highlighting perceived flaws that don't quite align with reality. For instance, if someone struggles with their own feelings of inadequacy, they might question your achievements or downplay your successes. It isn't about you. It's their own fears and insecurities coming to the surface. Recognizing this can help you approach these criticisms with understanding rather than taking them personally. By realizing that these judgments are reflections of their inner conflicts, you can separate your self-worth from the words of others. Sometimes, insecurity-driven projection reveals itself in comparisons. When someone feels inadequate in a particular area, they may compare themselves to you, subtly emphasizing any differences that make them feel better. These comparisons aren't about celebrating your differences, but about finding comfort in the idea that they're not alone in feeling less than perfect. For example, a friend who feels unfulfilled might focus on your struggles, subconsciously seeking relief by comparing your challenges to their own. In this way, they project their fears of inadequacy onto you, using your experiences to soothe their discomfort. Recognizing this projection allows you to understand their behavior without feeling diminished by it. Insecurities can also lead to assumptions that cast you in a negative light. When people project their insecurities, they might interpret your actions as confirmation of their fears. For instance, someone who worries about being abandoned might view a simple delay in response as a sign of rejection. It's not about your behavior, but about their underlying fears shaping their interpretation. This can be particularly challenging, as they may react emotionally to things you didn't intend. By understanding that these reactions are rooted in their insecurities, you can respond with empathy rather than frustration, maintaining stability in the relationship even when their fears come into play. One common form of projection involves expecting others to meet standards they themselves struggle with. When people feel inadequate in some area, they might impose high expectations on you, hoping that by seeing you succeed, they can reassure themselves. For example, someone who feels insecure about their career might hold you to high professional standards, expecting you to excel in ways they wish they could. This projection isn't about genuinely supporting your growth. It's about them seeking validation through your achievements. Recognizing these imposed expectations helps you separate your goals from others' needs, ensuring that you pursue success for yourself, not to fulfill someone else's insecurities. Projection can also take the form of excessive need for control. When people feel insecure, they may try to control situations and those around them to create a sense of stability. This need for control can manifest in your relationship as unsolicited advice, excessive criticism, or attempts to dictate your choices. It's their way of managing their own fears, as controlling others provides a sense of security. By recognizing this dynamic, you can set boundaries without taking their behavior personally, understanding that their need for control is about their own anxieties rather than a reflection of your decisions or character. Insecurities can fuel jealousy, causing others to view you through a lens of envy rather than support. When people feel unfulfilled or lacking in some way, they may struggle to celebrate your achievements, as your success reminds them of their own perceived failures. Instead of offering genuine encouragement, they might downplay your achievements or even criticize them. This jealousy isn't about you. It's their own feelings of inadequacy manifesting as resentment toward what they see in you. Understanding this helps you maintain a balanced perspective, reminding yourself that their reactions stem from their internal struggles rather than from any real flaws in you. Self-doubt in others can also lead to them questioning your choices or abilities. When someone struggles with their own confidence, they may project this doubt onto you, questioning your decisions or abilities in ways that feel unwarranted. This doubt can be subtle, perhaps expressed as concerns or advice that feels undermining rather than supportive. It's not a reflection of your capability, it's their insecurity speaking. Recognizing this dynamic allows you to trust in your own judgment, acknowledging that their doubts stem from their struggles with self-assurance rather than from any real concern about your choices. Another way insecurities manifest as projection is through defensiveness. When people feel insecure, they often interpret your comments as criticism, even when no criticism is intended. This defensiveness is a protective response, as they feel vulnerable and fear judgment. For instance, a simple suggestion might be met with resistance or an overreaction because they perceive it as an attack. This reaction is rooted in their self-doubt, causing them to misinterpret your intentions. By approaching these situations with patience, you can diffuse defensiveness, reassuring them that your intentions are positive and creating a safer space for open communication. Insecurities can also lead to projecting guilt or blame. When someone feels guilty about their own actions or choices, they may shift that guilt onto you, accusing you of behaviors that they're struggling with themselves. For example, a person who feels guilty about not prioritizing a relationship might accuse you of being distant, projecting their guilt onto you. This redirection of guilt allows them to avoid facing their own shortcomings, but it creates tension in your relationship. Recognizing this pattern enables you to approach the situation with clarity, understanding that their accusations are a reflection of their internal conflict rather than an accurate portrayal of your behavior. Sometimes people project their fears onto you, especially if they're afraid of failure or rejection. These fears might cause them to assume that you'll experience similar challenges, leading them to offer discouraging advice or to question your ambitions. For example, someone afraid of failure might downplay your goals, not because they doubt you, but because they fear what failure would mean for themselves. This projection of fear can feel limiting, as their caution reflects their own insecurities rather than any realistic assessment of your potential. Recognizing this projection empowers you to pursue your ambitions without being held back by others' fears, trusting in your own abilities rather than adopting their anxieties. People who struggle with insecurity may also project an excessive need for approval onto you, interpreting neutral actions as rejection or disinterest. For instance, if you're not immediately available, they might assume you're intentionally distancing yourself, even if you simply needed time to yourself. Their desire for constant reassurance can create pressure, as they interpret your independence as a lack of care. Understanding that their need for approval stems from their own insecurities helps you navigate these interactions with sensitivity, offering reassurance without feeling guilty for your boundaries. When people project insecurities, they may exhibit passive-aggressive behavior, using indirect comments or actions to express their feelings. This behavior often reflects their discomfort with openly addressing their insecurities, leading them to express their frustrations subtly. For example, someone who feels insecure about their achievements might make backhanded compliments about your successes, masking their jealousy in seemingly harmless remarks. Recognizing passive aggression as a form of projection allows you to respond calmly, avoiding escalation, and recognizing that their behavior reflects their own struggles rather than any real issues with you. Some people project their fear of change onto others, especially if they're resistant to personal growth or new experiences. When faced with someone who embraces change, they might express skepticism or try to dissuade you from pursuing new paths. This isn't a reflection of your choices, but of their discomfort with stepping outside their comfort zone. They see your willingness to evolve as a reminder of their own stagnation, leading them to project their resistance onto you. By recognizing this, you can confidently pursue change, knowing that their doubts are about their own fears rather than about your path. Insecurities can also lead to projecting negative assumptions, where people interpret neutral actions in the worst possible light. For instance, if you don't respond to a message immediately, they might assume you're ignoring them, reflecting their own fear of being overlooked or unimportant. This projection of negative assumptions creates unnecessary tension, as they interpret your actions based on their insecurities rather than on your true intentions. By understanding this pattern, you can offer gentle reassurance, showing them that your behavior isn't rooted in the negative intentions they assume. People who feel insecure about their appearance or lifestyle may also project judgment onto you, assuming that you're judging them even if you haven't expressed any criticism. This assumption can create distance, as they may become defensive or resentful, interpreting your behavior as judgmental when it's not. For example, if they're self-conscious about their health, they might assume you're silently judging them when you discuss your own health goals. Recognizing this projection allows you to approach conversations with sensitivity, clarifying that your choices aren't a reflection on them, which helps maintain harmony in the relationship. In relationships, people may project their own feelings of inadequacy, leading them to assume you're dissatisfied with them. This insecurity-driven assumption can create tension, as they interpret your actions through a lens of self-doubt, assuming you're judging them or wishing they were different. This projection often leads to misunderstandings, as they may misinterpret your intentions, seeing disapproval where there is none. Recognizing this dynamic allows you to approach the relationship with patience, offering reassurance that helps counteract their insecurity-based assumptions. Insecurities can also lead to emotional dependency, where people project their need for stability onto you, expecting you to fulfill roles that ease their insecurities. They might rely on you for validation, emotional support, or decision-making, placing pressure on the relationship. This dependency is a form of projection, as they seek in you the security they struggle to find within themselves. By setting boundaries, you can maintain a healthy balance, offering support without taking on the weight of their insecurities. Ultimately, understanding projection allows you to navigate relationships with compassion and clarity. Recognizing that others' reactions often reflect their insecurities rather than your actions helps you maintain a balanced perspective, approaching situations with empathy. By separating yourself from the projections of others, you retain control over your self-worth, building resilience in the face of unwarranted judgments and assumptions. Through self-awareness and patience, you can respond to projection with kindness, fostering relationships that allow for both individuality and mutual respect. When people look at others, they sometimes see reflections of their own hidden fears or dislikes, and without realizing it, these feelings shape how they respond. This process of seeing in others what they reject in themselves can create an invisible barrier affecting relationships and interactions. They may act with judgment, frustration, or avoidance, not because of something you've done, but because you remind them of something they're struggling to accept within themselves. This phenomenon is subtle, often lying below the surface, but it has the power to shape how people connect, forming perceptions that are less about reality and more about the mirror they're unwilling to face. This projection often leads to criticism that feels disproportionate to the situation. For instance, if someone is uncomfortable with their own ambition, they may judge others they see as similarly driven. To them, your confidence or pursuit of goals might feel excessive, even threatening, stirring up their insecurities. They might label you as overconfident or pushy, not because of any flaw in you, but because you bring to light something they have yet to accept within themselves. Understanding this allows you to see their criticism from a place of empathy, recognizing that their harshness is a reflection of their inner struggle rather than an accurate measure of your actions. Projection of fears and dislikes can also lead people to misinterpret your intentions, assuming motivations that align more with their own insecurities than with reality. If someone fears vulnerability, they may assume that any openness you show is a weakness, projecting their own discomfort onto you. This assumption distorts their perception as they view your actions through the lens of their own unresolved issues. Such misunderstandings can lead to unnecessary distance, with them seeing qualities in you that they fear in themselves. Recognizing this pattern helps you approach these situations with patience, understanding that their interpretation is less about you and more about their relationship with vulnerability. People who struggle with self-acceptance might also feel defensive around those who seem comfortable with themselves. If they dislike something within themselves, such as a lack of confidence or assertiveness, They may feel uneasy around people who embody these qualities, even if subtly. This discomfort can manifest as criticism or avoidance, as they instinctively react to what they perceive as a contrast to their own insecurities. They might view your self-assurance as arrogance or your assertiveness as pushiness, framing their judgments around their own unresolved issues. By understanding this dynamic, you can respond with empathy, recognizing that their response to you is shaped by their internal conflicts. Another common reaction is envy masked as disdain. When people see something in you that they wish they could embrace in themselves, they may express resentment rather than admiration. For instance, someone who feels restricted by their own fear of failure might belittle your willingness to take risks, downplaying your accomplishments or dismissing your choices. Their criticism isn't about genuine disapproval, it's their own frustration with themselves being redirected toward you. Knowing this can help you maintain perspective, seeing through the surface reactions to the root of their feelings, and recognizing that their judgments reflect their struggles rather than your reality. Projection also appears in subtle ways when people have unresolved fears about authenticity. If someone feels uncomfortable being genuine, they may see your authenticity as confrontational or even self-indulgent. This perception stems from their own discomfort with self-expression. Rather than embracing your openness, they see it as a reminder of what they suppress within themselves. They might describe you as too much or claim that you're seeking attention, criticisms that reveal more about their fears than your behavior. By seeing this, you can navigate their responses without internalizing their judgments, understanding that their reactions are shaped by an inner resistance to authenticity. Sometimes people react negatively to others who embody values they wish they could live by, but feel unable to pursue. Someone who values security, yet yearns for freedom, might feel uneasy around those who openly prioritize independence. They might criticize you for choices that challenge their comfort zones, casting judgments based on their own internal conflict rather than any fault in you. This reaction is often an attempt to justify their own decisions by invalidating yours, finding comfort in casting your values as flawed. Recognizing this allows you to hold your values confidently, understanding that their reactions are rooted in their struggle to align with their own desires. Fear of failure is another projection point that causes people to react critically. Those who grapple with this fear may project it onto others, assuming that your ambitions are unrealistic or destined for disappointment. If they have trouble pursuing their own goals, they may subtly undermine yours, not out of malice, but because they see in you what they fear they lack. Their attempts to dissuade you from taking risks often reflect their internalized fear, seeking reassurance by casting your choices as impractical. This projection is about their need for comfort in their choices, not about the feasibility of your goals. Recognizing this can help you stay true to your path without being swayed by their doubts. People's insecurities about worthiness often lead them to project judgments onto others who seem at peace with themselves. If they feel unworthy, they might resent others' self-acceptance, interpreting it as smugness or vanity. For example, if you speak confidently about your achievements, someone struggling with self-worth might view it as boasting, reflecting their discomfort with their own feelings of inadequacy. This projection is about them seeking to diminish what they envy as they attempt to level the emotional playing field. Understanding this dynamic can help you recognize their response as a reflection of their self-perception, allowing you to engage without taking their judgments to heart. People also project their anxieties about change onto others who embrace growth. If someone feels uneasy about evolving or stepping outside their comfort zone, they may criticize those who seem unafraid to change. They might label your adaptability as instability or your willingness to try new things as impulsiveness. This judgment isn't about you. It's their way of justifying their own resistance to change. By seeing through this reaction, you can continue embracing growth without feeling pressured to align with their limited perspective, understanding that their judgment is a reflection of their fears rather than of your choices. When people fear judgment from others, they often project that fear outward, assuming you're judging them just as they judge themselves. This assumption creates unnecessary tension, as they interpret neutral interactions as criticism. For instance, if you express an opinion, they might react defensively, assuming you're critiquing them indirectly. This reaction is rooted in their own self-criticism, as they project their fears onto you. By recognizing this, you can approach these situations with understanding, offering reassurance while avoiding the need to defend your intentions, knowing that their reaction stems from their inner dialogue. Projection can also manifest in defensiveness when people feel threatened by qualities they wish they had. If they struggle with patience, for instance, they might become irritated by your calm demeanor, interpreting it as indifference or lack of urgency. This irritation is their way of justifying their own behavior, as they find it easier to criticize your qualities than to confront their own impatience. Recognizing this allows you to remain calm without internalizing their frustration, seeing that their reaction is a reflection of their struggles rather than an accurate critique of your approach. Fear of vulnerability often leads to projecting cynicism onto those who show openness. People uncomfortable with vulnerability may view emotional openness as weakness, responding with skepticism or dismissiveness. If you share your feelings honestly, they might label you as naive, a judgment rooted in their own discomfort. Their reaction reflects their struggle to embrace vulnerability, as they see in you a quality they find challenging. By recognizing this, you can maintain your openness without feeling diminished by their skepticism, understanding that their response is more about their inner walls than any flaw in your approach. At times, people project their insecurities about success onto others who achieve their goals. If they're dissatisfied with their progress, they may downplay or criticize your achievements as a way to cope with their own frustrations. For instance, they might label your hard work as luck or attribute your success to external factors, dismissing your efforts to soothe their insecurities. This projection reflects their difficulty in acknowledging their own feelings of inadequacy, as they find comfort in minimizing your accomplishments. By understanding this, you can appreciate your achievements without needing validation from others, recognizing that their judgments are a reflection of their struggles. Some people project their struggles with control onto others who seem more adaptable, criticizing flexibility as a lack of focus. If they find security in rigid routines, they might view your spontaneity as chaotic, interpreting your adaptability as a flaw. This projection allows them to reinforce their sense of control by framing your approach as misguided. Understanding this reaction helps you remain true to your adaptable nature, seeing that their judgments are rooted in their own need for stability rather than any real fault in your behavior. People's unresolved fears of imperfection can also cause them to project criticisms onto others who embrace their flaws. If someone struggles with self-acceptance, they may resent those who appear comfortable with imperfection, interpreting it as carelessness or a lack of ambition. This projection allows them to avoid confronting their own insecurities, as they find it easier to criticize others than to face their discomfort with themselves. By recognizing this, you can continue embracing your authentic self without feeling pressured to meet others' perfectionist standards, understanding that their judgments reveal more about their internal struggles than about your worth. Understanding projection's impact allows you to approach relationships with empathy and strength, recognizing that others' reactions often reflect their fears rather than your actions. By separating their judgments from your self-worth, you can navigate interactions with clarity, maintaining your sense of self even amid the projections of those around you. Through patience and self-awareness, you can engage with compassion, fostering connections that are rooted in mutual respect rather than clouded by insecurities. A lack of empathy and understanding in relationships creates a silent distance, making genuine connections feel strained and sometimes impossible. When someone is unable or unwilling to step outside of their own perspective, they may miss the nuances of what others feel or experience. This lack of understanding isn't always intentional, yet it can have a lasting impact, creating misunderstandings and making people feel unseen or unsupported. In any relationship, empathy is the bridge that connects hearts and minds, allowing each person to feel valued and understood. Without this bridge, interactions become shallow, and even well-intentioned actions can fall short, leading to frustration and disconnection. The absence of empathy often results in a judgmental outlook. When someone fails to empathize, they may quickly jump to conclusions about others' actions or intentions, interpreting behaviors without considering underlying reasons. For example, they may view someone's quietness as aloofness or disinterest, without realizing that the person might be dealing with personal struggles or simply needing a moment of reflection. This rush to judgment leaves little room for compassion, as they assess situations solely from their own perspective, assuming others feel and think as they do. Over time, this pattern of judgment can create resentment, as the person on the receiving end feels misunderstood and unfairly labeled. This lack of understanding also leads to dismissive attitudes, where people minimize or ignore others' feelings and experiences. When someone lacks empathy, they may trivialize the struggles of those around them, perceiving these challenges as insignificant or exaggerated. For instance, if a friend expresses frustration over a stressful work situation, a person lacking empathy might respond by downplaying the issue, perhaps saying it's not a big deal or that they shouldn't let it bother them. These dismissive responses can feel invalidating, as they suggest that the person's feelings don't matter. Such interactions discourage open communication, as people learn that sharing their feelings may only lead to further disappointment. A lack of empathy also makes it difficult for people to offer genuine support. When empathy is missing, support can feel forced or superficial, as it lacks the warmth and understanding that make it meaningful. For example, someone might offer help out of obligation rather than genuine care, resulting in gestures that feel empty or performative. This type of support does little to foster connection, as the person in need can sense that the other's heart isn't fully invested. Without empathy, even well-meaning acts can miss the mark, as they fail to address the true emotional needs of the person receiving them. Genuine support requires a willingness to see things from another's perspective, providing comfort that aligns with what they truly need. One of the most challenging effects of an empathy deficit is the tendency to place blame on others without considering the bigger picture. When someone lacks understanding, they may see others' mistakes as personal failings rather than as part of a complex situation. For example, they might blame a friend for being irresponsible if they face financial difficulties, overlooking the external pressures or unexpected challenges that may have contributed to the situation. This inclination to blame creates a culture of judgment, where people feel scrutinized rather than supported. It also discourages people from being vulnerable, as they fear being held responsible for circumstances beyond their control. In this way, a lack of empathy fosters a cycle of blame and defensiveness, eroding trust over time. Without empathy, relationships can become transactional, focusing on exchanges rather than mutual care. People who lack empathy may view interactions in terms of give and take, measuring what they offer against what they receive. This approach can make others feel like they're being kept at arm's length, as the relationship centers on balancing favors rather than building emotional connections. For instance, a friend might only offer help if they expect something in return, making their support feel conditional. Over time, these transactional relationships become exhausting, as they lack the depth and security of connections built on genuine care and understanding. People begin to feel that their worth is tied to what they can offer, rather than to who they are. Another subtle impact of limited empathy is the lack of active listening. Without empathy, people may listen only to respond rather than to understand, often interrupting or steering conversations back to themselves. This type of listening prevents genuine understanding, as the focus remains on one person's perspective rather than on a mutual exchange. When someone listens with empathy, they allow the other person's words to resonate, offering responses that reflect an understanding of their emotions. In contrast, an empathy deficit makes conversations feel shallow, as people feel unheard and unappreciated. This lack of meaningful dialogue gradually wears on relationships, as the absence of active listening prevents people from feeling truly connected. In some cases, a lack of empathy results in people avoiding others' pain altogether. If someone feels uncomfortable with difficult emotions, they might distance themselves from those going through challenging times, rather than offering support. This avoidance creates feelings of isolation for the person in need, as they sense that their struggles make others uncomfortable. For example, a friend might withdraw when another friend faces loss, unsure how to handle the situation and choosing to avoid it instead. This lack of presence during times of hardship can be deeply hurtful, as people feel abandoned at moments when they most need compassion. Recognizing this pattern helps us understand that empathy involves not just listening, but being willing to sit with others in their pain, even when it feels uncomfortable. Another consequence of insufficient empathy is a lack of patience. When people are unable to understand others' struggles, they may grow frustrated easily, expecting others to move on or get over challenges quickly. This impatience can feel dismissive, as it suggests that others' pain is an inconvenience. For instance, someone might become irritated if a friend continues to express sadness over a breakup, viewing it as excessive rather than recognizing the depth of the hurt. This impatience not only strains relationships, but also prevents meaningful healing, as people feel pressured to hide their emotions to avoid judgment. Empathy fosters patience, allowing people to process their experiences without feeling rushed. A lack of empathy can also foster a competitive mindset, where people view others' struggles as a reflection of their own worth. When someone lacks empathy, they might see others' challenges as opportunities to elevate themselves, subtly comparing their own resilience or success against others' difficulties. This competitiveness can create tension, as it shifts the focus away from compassion and onto personal validation. For instance, a person might feel pride in handling a similar struggle better, using someone else's pain as a measure of their own strength. This mindset discourages genuine support, as the person becomes more focused on proving their own resilience than on understanding others' experiences. The absence of empathy may lead to dismissing the importance of boundaries in relationships. People who lack understanding may overlook or disrespect others' boundaries, assuming that their own needs or perspectives take priority. This disregard for boundaries can feel invasive, as it shows a lack of respect for the other person's comfort or autonomy. For example, a friend might push for details about a personal issue, ignoring subtle cues that the person isn't ready to share. This lack of sensitivity to boundaries reflects an inability to see things from the other's perspective, as they prioritize their curiosity or need for information over the other person's emotional readiness. In professional settings, a lack of empathy can create a hostile work environment. When empathy is missing, leaders and colleagues may focus solely on productivity and results, overlooking the well-being of their team members. This approach creates a culture where people feel valued only for their output, with little regard for their emotional or mental health. For instance, a manager might push for increased productivity without acknowledging the team's stress levels, making employees feel like they're mere assets rather than valued individuals. Over time, this lack of empathy erodes morale as people feel disconnected and unsupported. Empathy in the workplace fosters a sense of belonging, allowing people to thrive both personally and professionally. A lack of empathy also hinders conflict resolution. When people are unable to see things from each other's perspectives, disagreements become more about winning than about understanding. Without empathy, conflicts escalate quickly, as each person clings to their own viewpoint without considering the other's feelings or needs. This rigid stance prevents compromise, as people become more focused on defending their position than on finding a resolution. Empathy allows people to approach conflict with an open mind, seeking solutions that honor everyone's needs. In its absence, conflicts often leave lasting resentment, as each person feels unheard and disrespected. The absence of empathy can lead to an inability to celebrate others' achievements. When people lack understanding, they may struggle to feel genuine happiness for others, especially if they're dealing with their own insecurities or frustrations. This lack of joy for others' success often stems from a focus on personal struggles, as they view others' achievements as a reminder of their own challenges. For example, a friend might downplay your promotion because it highlights their dissatisfaction with their own career. This response lacks empathy, as it prioritizes their own feelings over your accomplishment, creating distance where there should be celebration. Empathy allows people to rejoice in each other's successes without comparison, building stronger connections through shared happiness. Without empathy, people may also struggle to accept differences in opinions or lifestyles. This lack of openness creates an atmosphere of judgment, where any deviation from personal beliefs is viewed with suspicion or disapproval. For instance, someone who lacks empathy might struggle to accept a friend's life choices that differ from their own, imposing their values rather than respecting the friend's autonomy. This judgmental attitude creates tension, as it suggests that only one perspective is valid. Empathy, on the other hand, fosters acceptance, allowing people to embrace differences without feeling threatened, creating a space where all perspectives can coexist. A deficiency in empathy can also lead to an inability to recognize others' sacrifices. When people lack understanding, they may overlook the efforts others make to support them, taking these sacrifices for granted. This unawareness creates an imbalance, as one person continues to give without feeling appreciated. For example, a partner might fail to notice the small sacrifices their spouse makes to keep the household running smoothly, viewing these efforts as expected rather than as acts of care. This lack of gratitude can erode relationships, as the person making sacrifices feels unappreciated and overlooked. Empathy allows people to see the silent ways others support them, fostering gratitude that strengthens bonds. The lack of empathy can make relationships feel cold and transactional, stripping away the warmth and understanding that make connections fulfilling. When people are unable to connect on an emotional level, interactions become shallow, focusing on obligations rather than genuine care. For instance, a family member might only check in during major events, lacking the everyday empathy that makes relationships meaningful. This transactional approach leaves people feeling disconnected, as they sense that their presence is valued only when it's convenient. Empathy brings a sense of warmth and presence to relationships, creating a foundation of care that transcends obligations. In every relationship, empathy is the thread that weaves people together, allowing them to see, support, and celebrate each other in genuine ways. When empathy is missing, connections lose depth, and interactions become shadowed by misunderstanding and judgment. By recognizing the importance of empathy, we can cultivate relationships built on patience, understanding, and respect, creating a space where people feel valued not just for what they do, but for who they are. When compassion fades from relationships, what remains can feel hollow, tense, and slowly breed resentment. Compassion, the willingness to genuinely understand and share in another's experiences, is the heart of meaningful connections. Without it, interactions can feel cold, misunderstandings grow, and unspoken hurt takes root. Over time, the absence of compassion leaves a void, replacing warmth and trust with frustration and bitterness. This lack isn't always intentional. Sometimes it's the result of stress, preoccupation, or simply drifting apart. Yet the effects linger, creating barriers where there should be bridges. Without compassion, relationships become strained, as unmet emotional needs create invisible wounds that deepen with time. One of the clearest signs of a compassion deficit is dismissiveness. When someone dismisses another's feelings or experiences, it communicates a lack of interest and care. For example, if a partner expresses disappointment or frustration and the other responds with phrases like, "It's not that bad," or "You'll get over it," it minimizes their pain. These remarks might seem minor, yet over time they erode trust, as one person feels unheard. Dismissiveness creates a cycle where the person who feels ignored becomes less willing to share, sensing that their feelings won't be met with understanding. This closed-off communication deepens resentment as both sides begin to drift apart, feeling isolated in what should be a shared journey. A lack of compassion also fosters selfishness in relationships. When people fail to prioritize each other's well-being, focusing only on their own needs, it breeds frustration. For instance, if a friend consistently expects support but rarely offers it, the relationship becomes one-sided. Over time, the person who feels neglected may start viewing the friendship as a burden rather than a bond. This dynamic often leads to resentment, as they feel taken for granted and unvalued. Relationships require mutual care, where each person is willing to give as much as they take. Without this balance, compassion fades, and the neglected person may begin to withdraw emotionally, feeling that their presence is only valued for what they can provide. A lack of compassion can also make apologies feel insincere. When people don't fully empathize with the hurt they've caused, their apologies often lack depth, coming across as hollow or obligatory. For instance, someone might say, "I'm sorry if you felt that way," shifting the blame to the other person's feelings rather than taking responsibility. This type of apology can breed resentment, as it suggests a lack of accountability. True compassion involves recognizing the impact of one's actions and offering a genuine apology that acknowledges the other person's pain. Without this, apologies become another source of frustration as they fail to heal wounds, leaving unresolved hurt to fester. When compassion is missing, people are less likely to show patience with each other's imperfections. In compassionate relationships, flaws are accepted with understanding, recognizing that everyone has challenges. However, when compassion fades, criticism often takes its place. For instance, a spouse might become more judgmental of minor annoyances, like forgetting tasks or making small mistakes, rather than offering support or encouragement. This critical attitude can feel like a constant attack, leading to feelings of inadequacy and frustration. Compassionate patience allows relationships to grow, as each person feels supported rather than scrutinized. Without it, judgment builds walls, making each person feel they must defend themselves rather than openly sharing their struggles. A lack of compassion can also lead to a controlling attitude, where one person seeks to mold the other according to their own standards. Compassion understands that each person has unique needs, dreams, and boundaries. Without it, there's a tendency to view others as extensions of oneself, expecting them to meet specific standards or fulfill certain roles. For example, a parent might push their child to pursue a particular career, not out of genuine care, but from a desire to see their own values reflected. This control is suffocating, creating resentment as the child feels their autonomy is overlooked. Compassion respects individuality, allowing relationships to thrive on mutual respect rather than forced expectations. When compassion fades, so does the willingness to forgive. In compassionate relationships, forgiveness is a natural part of the bond, as each person understands that mistakes are inevitable. However, without compassion, grudges linger and past hurts remain unaddressed. For example, if a friend makes a hurtful remark and the other person lacks compassion, they may hold on to the anger, revisiting it whenever tensions arise. This lack of forgiveness builds resentment, as one hurt compounds another, creating a cycle where unresolved pain overshadows any positive aspects of the relationship. Compassionate forgiveness releases these burdens, allowing relationships to heal and move forward, free from the weight of past wounds. Another way a lack of compassion breeds resentment is through a lack of reciprocity in emotional support. Relationships thrive when both people feel comfortable expressing their feelings, knowing they'll receive understanding in return. However, when compassion is missing, support often feels one-sided. For instance, a person might turn to their partner for comfort during difficult times, but be unavailable when their partner needs support. This imbalance creates frustration, as one person feels emotionally drained, always giving without receiving. Without compassion, emotional support becomes a transactional expectation rather than a natural exchange, leading to resentment as one person feels left to bear their burdens alone. The absence of compassion also prevents people from celebrating each other's growth and achievements. When someone lacks compassion, they may react to others' successes with indifference or jealousy rather than genuine joy. For example, a friend might downplay another's promotion or accomplishment, seeing it as a reminder of their own stagnation rather than a cause for celebration. This lack of enthusiasm can feel hurtful, as achievements that deserve support are met with apathy or resentment. Compassionate relationships celebrate each other's victories, creating a foundation of mutual encouragement. Without it, resentment grows, as people feel that their happiness is unwelcome or unimportant. A lack of compassion can also prevent people from seeing beyond their own needs in moments of conflict. Compassion allows people to consider each other's perspectives, seeking resolutions that respect everyone's feelings. Without it, disagreements become battles for validation, as each person focuses solely on defending their viewpoint. This rigid approach makes compromise difficult, as neither side feels understood or valued. For example, a couple might argue over household responsibilities, each insisting on their own perspective without considering the other's workload or challenges. Without compassion, conflicts escalate as both sides dig in, viewing each other as adversaries rather than partners. This cycle creates lingering resentment as each person feels unsupported and unseen. In relationships lacking compassion, unspoken hurt often lingers, creating a silent resentment that festers over time. When compassion is present, people feel comfortable sharing their disappointments, knowing they'll be met with understanding. However, without it, people may hide their feelings, fearing judgment or indifference. This suppression leads to unexpressed frustration as emotions build up without a healthy outlet. For instance, a friend might feel hurt by another's behavior but avoid addressing it, sensing that their feelings won't be acknowledged. Over time, these unspoken hurts create emotional distance as one person withdraws, feeling that their emotions are unwelcome. The absence of compassion can make relationships feel transactional, where actions are measured rather than freely given. When people lack compassion, they may approach relationships with a mindset of keeping score, noting each act of kindness or support as if it were a debt to be repaid. This approach creates a cold atmosphere, as each person feels obligated rather than genuinely cared for. For example, a partner might say, "I did this for you, so you owe me," turning loving gestures into bargaining chips. Compassion, on the other hand, gives freely without expectation, creating a warmth that fosters closeness. Without it, relationships feel more like a series of exchanges than a true connection. Without compassion, people may struggle to empathize with each other's boundaries, leading to a lack of respect for personal space and emotional needs. Compassion recognizes the importance of boundaries, allowing people to say no without fear of backlash. However, in the absence of compassion, boundaries are often overlooked or dismissed, as one person's desires take precedence over the other's comfort. For example, a friend might insist on spending time together, disregarding the other's need for solitude or rest. This disregard breeds resentment, as the person whose boundaries are violated feels that their needs are unimportant. Compassionate relationships honor boundaries, creating a foundation of respect that prevents resentment. A lack of compassion can also create emotional distance, as people feel less inclined to share their inner lives when they sense a lack of understanding. In compassionate relationships, vulnerability is met with care, creating a safe space for sharing. However, when compassion is missing, people may hesitate to open up, fearing judgment or indifference. This reluctance to share deepens the divide, as each person feels disconnected, lacking the closeness that comes from mutual understanding. Over time, this emotional distance breeds resentment, as people feel that their relationship lacks depth or meaning, reduced to surface-level interactions that fail to fulfill their need for connection. The absence of compassion leads to unbalanced relationships, where one person often bears a greater emotional burden. When compassion is lacking, one person may feel they're always the one giving, compromising, or making sacrifices. This imbalance creates frustration, as the person carrying the weight feels unsupported. For example, a sibling might consistently handle family responsibilities, while the other remains uninvolved, assuming their efforts will go unnoticed. This dynamic breeds resentment, as the person who gives feels unappreciated, burdened by a relationship that feels one-sided. Compassion ensures that both sides contribute equally, fostering a sense of partnership that prevents resentment. Compassion's absence prevents people from fully appreciating each other's unique qualities, often leading to a desire for conformity. When people lack compassion, they may expect others to mirror their own beliefs or behaviors, leaving little room for individuality. This expectation feels restrictive, as one person senses that their true self is unwelcome. For instance, a partner might subtly pressure the other to adopt their interests or lifestyle, creating a sense of resentment as the person feels their identity is being overshadowed. Compassion celebrates individuality, creating space for each person to be themselves without fear of judgment. Without it, relationships feel stifling, as each person struggles to fit a mold that doesn't align with who they are. Ultimately, compassion is the foundation of fulfilling relationships. Its absence leaves a void, where resentment gradually replaces closeness and joy. When people fail to offer understanding and care, relationships become strained, as unmet emotional needs create barriers to genuine connection. Recognizing the importance of compassion allows people to approach relationships with patience and empathy, fostering bonds that bring out the best in each other. Through compassion, people can build relationships that are resilient, supportive, and deeply fulfilling, creating a space where both individuals feel valued, respected, and truly seen. In relationships, competition can start out harmless, but, if unchecked, can easily become toxic, eroding trust and breeding resentment. What begins as a friendly exchange or a subtle drive to keep up can quickly spiral into rivalry, where each person starts to see the other as an opponent rather than a partner. This underlying tension turns achievements into comparisons, and support becomes scarce, replaced by quiet envy or hidden frustration. When rivalry overshadows connection, relationships feel strained, as mutual appreciation is replaced by the constant need to one-up or prove oneself. Unhealthy competition can lead to comparing every aspect of life, from career success to social status, creating a breeding ground for insecurity. For instance, if one friend consistently seeks out accomplishments just to outshine the other, it shifts the relationship from genuine support to quiet judgment. This fixation on measuring oneself against another can make both people feel inadequate, constantly evaluating their worth based on external achievements. Over time, the joy of friendship or partnership is replaced by silent scrutiny, as each person becomes more invested in the competition than in cherishing their shared moments. This kind of rivalry also shifts the focus from collective growth to individual gain, where one person's success feels like a setback to the other. When people are driven by competition, they may subtly celebrate failures or downplay achievements, diminishing the bond they share. In these situations, even kind words might come with an undercurrent of superiority or a hint of satisfaction in the other's missteps. Such interactions leave a mark, as each person senses that they are being measured, not celebrated, creating an unspoken barrier that prevents genuine connection and growth. Unhealthy competition often discourages openness, as each person fears their vulnerability might be used against them. In a competitive relationship, sharing personal challenges or weaknesses can feel risky, as the other person might see this as an opportunity to elevate themselves. For instance, a friend might reveal a career struggle only to later find that the other has used this information to appear more successful by comparison. This reluctance to be vulnerable keeps interactions superficial, as both sides guard their insecurities, worried about being seen as less than. Genuine intimacy fades, replaced by calculated conversations that prioritize self-protection over connection. When rivalry intensifies, even mutual goals and collaborative projects become battlegrounds. Instead of working together, each person might try to assert dominance, pushing their ideas forward to showcase their abilities rather than finding common ground. This dynamic is common in workplaces, where colleagues should ideally work in harmony, yet rivalry prevents true teamwork. Instead of fostering a supportive environment, this competition creates an atmosphere of tension where each person is eager to take credit and reluctant to share it. Projects suffer as collaboration takes a back seat to individual recognition, and resentment builds as each person feels unappreciated or overshadowed. Unhealthy competition often leads to a focus on flaws rather than strengths, as each person scrutinizes the other for perceived weaknesses. This critical lens reduces empathy, as one person fixates on finding faults to feel superior. For instance, a friend might downplay another's achievements by pointing out minor mistakes or questioning their decisions. This behavior creates a negative feedback loop, where both sides feel pressured to prove their worth and become defensive in the face of criticism. Rather than celebrating each other's strengths, they become obsessed with exposing each other's vulnerabilities, which drains the relationship of warmth and support. In romantic relationships, rivalry can subtly shift affection into an unspoken contest, where each partner tries to assert their value through accomplishments. When one partner constantly seeks to outdo the other, small acts of love become overshadowed by an underlying need for validation. For example, a partner might feel compelled to excel in their career to prove their worth, sensing that the relationship's balance relies on one-upping rather than mutual appreciation. This constant drive to compete prevents true intimacy, as each person is more focused on impressing than connecting. Over time, this dynamic creates emotional distance, as both partners feel they must earn love rather than simply sharing it. In family settings, unhealthy competition can lead to favoritism, where siblings or relatives feel pressure to outperform each other to win approval. Parents, sometimes unknowingly, contribute to this rivalry by comparing achievements, fueling a sense of rivalry that lingers into adulthood. Siblings who grew up in such environments may struggle to support each other as the patterns of competition remain ingrained. Instead of feeling pride in each other's successes, they feel a lingering tension, as if each achievement somehow diminishes their own worth. This sibling rivalry, rooted in a lack of compassion, can erode family bonds, making it difficult to foster a supportive, unified family environment. Unhealthy competition can also diminish self-worth, as people measure their value against others rather than recognizing their unique strengths. When someone constantly compares themselves to a friend or partner, they risk losing sight of their own identity, becoming consumed by the desire to keep up. This focus on external validation leaves little room for self-acceptance, as they define their achievements in terms of others' successes. For example, a person might feel discontent in their job, not because they're unfulfilled, but because they perceive their friend's career as more impressive. This relentless pursuit of validation creates a cycle of dissatisfaction, as each person's self-worth becomes contingent on surpassing the other. One of the most damaging aspects of rivalry is that it discourages encouragement. In healthy relationships, each person feels uplifted by the other's success, finding joy in shared accomplishments. However, in competitive relationships, encouragement feels forced or even non-existent, as each success serves as a reminder of what the other lacks. This absence of support creates isolation, as one person feels they cannot rely on the other for genuine celebration. For instance, a friend might downplay another's accomplishments or offer lukewarm congratulations, signaling that they see the success as a threat rather than a reason for happiness. Without encouragement, relationships feel cold, as each person senses that their victories are met with indifference or envy. When rivalry infiltrates a relationship, it often shifts people's focus from growth to perfection. Rather than accepting each other's journey, they become fixated on meeting specific standards to win in the relationship. This relentless pursuit of perfection makes failure intolerable, as each person fears that any setback will make them appear inferior. For example, a colleague might feel compelled to conceal mistakes, afraid that their team member will see it as a weakness to exploit. This obsession with image prevents authentic growth, as both parties feel pressured to maintain a flawless facade rather than embrace learning and improvement. The fear of failure stifles personal development, creating a stagnant environment where mistakes are hidden, not learned from. In competitive relationships, jealousy becomes a driving force, clouding interactions with resentment and suspicion. When people feel threatened by others' successes, they may interpret even positive actions as attempts to show superiority. For instance, a friend might offer helpful advice, only for the other to see it as condescending. This jealousy turns small gestures into perceived slights, as both parties read negative intentions where none exist. The relationship becomes fraught with tension as each person grows defensive, assuming that the other's actions are motivated by a desire to outdo rather than support. Jealousy, when fueled by rivalry, blinds people to each other's goodwill, creating a hostile environment where support feels scarce. Unhealthy competition prevents people from acknowledging their interdependence, fostering a sense of isolation rather than unity. In compassionate relationships, people recognize that they're stronger together, celebrating each other's strengths and compensating for each other's weaknesses. However, in competitive relationships, interdependence is viewed as a weakness, as each person strives to be self-sufficient to maintain their edge. For example, a partner might refuse help on a project, insisting on doing it alone to prove their capability. This refusal to lean on each other limits collaboration, as both parties miss out on the benefits of mutual support. The relationship becomes fractured, as each person feels they must face challenges alone, without the security of a trusted partner. Another consequence of rivalry is that it reduces empathy, as each person becomes so focused on their own performance that they fail to consider the other's feelings. In relationships strained by competition, people may overlook each other's struggles, viewing them as opportunities to get ahead rather than moments for compassion. For instance, a colleague might feel relief rather than empathy when another faces a setback, seeing it as a chance to shine. This lack of empathy erodes trust, as each person senses that the other is more invested in their own success than in mutual well-being. Compassion fades, replaced by a self-centered focus that undermines the very foundation of the relationship. Unhealthy competition can also lead to passive-aggressive behavior, where people express resentment subtly rather than directly. When rivalry prevents open communication, frustrations manifest as veiled comments or subtle put-downs, as each person struggles to voice their feelings openly. For example, a friend might make a backhanded compliment about another's achievement, masking their envy in seemingly supportive words. This passive aggressiveness creates an environment of tension where each interaction feels laden with hidden meanings. Instead of addressing issues directly, both parties communicate through hints and innuendos, creating an atmosphere where trust is eroded by the constant need to read between the lines. Ultimately, unhealthy competition leaves relationships drained of joy, as each person becomes more invested in winning than in sharing meaningful experiences. When people view relationships through the lens of rivalry, they miss the beauty of collaboration and connection, seeing only the need to outperform. The constant comparison becomes exhausting, as both parties feel pressured to prove themselves rather than relax and enjoy each other's company. Relationships, which should offer comfort and support, become sources of stress and insecurity, leaving both people longing for a break from the tension. Recognizing the impact of rivalry allows people to shift their focus from competition to compassion. By embracing each other's successes and offering support rather than judgment, relationships can become spaces of growth and connection. Instead of measuring worth through achievements, people can find fulfillment in mutual encouragement, building bonds that foster trust, empathy, and joy. When admiration is tainted by rivalry, it can transform what was once respect into bitterness. There's a delicate line between looking up to someone and feeling resentful about their success. And when this line is crossed, admiration turns into hostility. What started as inspiration becomes a source of irritation, as one person finds it harder and harder to celebrate the achievements they once admired. This shift often happens subtly, building up over time as quiet envy grows into resentment, until admiration no longer fosters closeness, but instead creates distance and tension. One of the earliest signs of this shift is an undercurrent of comparison that replaces genuine appreciation. Instead of seeing the other person's success as motivation, it becomes a reminder of one's own perceived shortcomings. For example, a colleague might once have admired another's work ethic, feeling inspired by their achievements, but as competition grows, each accomplishment now feels like a challenge to their own worth. This subtle resentment builds as they start viewing each success not as something to learn from, but as a shadow over their own progress. The admiration that once encouraged them now only fuels their insecurities, as each comparison reminds them of what they feel they lack. This shift from admiration to hostility also affects how people interpret the actions of the person they once respected. When rivalry becomes overwhelming, even